She walked into the most important meeting of her career with mascara stains she couldn't quite hide and a diamond engagement ring she should have thrown in the trash. Clara Bennett had exactly 1 hour to convince a billionaire to trust her with his vision, while her heart was still bleeding from the betrayal she'd discovered that morning. Her fiancé, her colleague, her bed. The images wouldn't stop. But across the conference table sat a man who looked like he could see straight through her composure. And when Lucien Moretti leaned forward and asked in that low, dangerous voice, "Who made you cry?" Everything she thought she knew about control shattered. If you want to see how far this story can go, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see where you're watching from. Now let's begin. The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but Clara kept her hands wrapped around the cup anyway, because it gave her something to grip besides the edge of the table. She sat in the small break room on the 14th floor of Jensen and Associates, staring at the brown liquid like it held answers, while her brain tried to make sense of what she'd seen. Her bed, her apartment, her fiancé buried between the thighs of Vanessa Cho, the woman Clara had mentored for 6 months. The worst part wasn't even the sex. It was the laugh. That casual, intimate laugh Marcus had given when Vanessa whispered something Clara couldn't hear. Like they'd done this 100 times. Like Clara had been the idiot all along. She'd left without saying a word. Just backed out of her own bedroom, grabbed her presentation boards from the living room, and walked out of the apartment she'd been paying rent on for 3 years while Marcus got his startup off the ground. Now she sat in the office at 7:43 a.m. trying to remember how to breathe. "Clara?" She looked up. David Jensen stood in the doorway, his expression somewhere between concern and impatience. Her boss. The man who'd given her the shot. "The Moretti meeting is in 17 minutes, he said carefully. "Are you ready?" No, she wasn't ready. She wasn't even functional. But she heard herself say, "Yes, I'm ready." David studied her face. Clara knew what he saw. Red eyes, smeared makeup she'd tried to fix in the bathroom, the slight tremor in her hands she couldn't quite control. "Clara, if you need to postpone—" "I don't." She stood up too fast and the chair scraped against the tile. "I've been preparing for this pitch for 2 months. I'm not postponing." Something flickered in David's eyes. Respect, maybe? Or pity? She couldn't tell and didn't care. "He's early," David said. "He's already in the conference room." Of course he was early. Men like Lucien Moretti didn't wait for anything. Clara grabbed her boards and followed David down the hall, her heels clicking against marble in a rhythm that felt too loud, too exposing. She could feel her phone buzzing in her pocket. Marcus, probably. 17 missed calls since she'd left the apartment. She'd stopped looking after the 5th one. The conference room sat at the corner of the building, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of Manhattan that usually made Clara's chest expand with possibility. Today, it just looked gray. David opened the door, and Clara's first thought was that the man sitting at the head of the table didn't belong in a room this ordinary. Lucien Moretti looked exactly like his Forbes profile photo, except the camera had somehow failed to capture the sheer physical presence of him. He was maybe 40, with dark hair cut precisely and a face that was all sharp angles and controlled intensity. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than Clara's monthly rent, and he sat perfectly still in a way that made everyone else in the room look restless by comparison. 2 other men flanked him. Clara recognized one as his lawyer, Gregory Chen. The other, she didn't know. Broader, watchful, with the coiled readiness of someone who'd been hired for a very different skill set than contract law. "Mr. Moretti," David said with the careful warmth of someone who knew exactly how much money was sitting across from him. "Thank you for coming. This is Clara Bennett, our senior creative director. She'll be walking you through the proposal." Lucien's gaze shifted to Clara, and she felt the impact of it like a physical thing. His eyes were dark, not quite black, but close, and they moved over her face with the kind of attention that made her spine straighten reflexively. He didn't stand, didn't offer his hand, just looked at her with an expression she couldn't read and said, "Ms. Bennett." His voice was low, textured, with the faintest trace of an accent she couldn't place. Italian, maybe, buried under years of American private schools. "Mr. Moretti?" Clara set her boards down on the table, grateful her hands weren't shaking anymore. Adrenaline had kicked in, or maybe just the desperate need to prove she could do this. I'm going to show you what we can do for the Apex Foundation launch. She'd practiced this pitch 40 times, knew every word, every transition, every moment where she'd pause for effect. But when she opened her mouth, Lucien raised one hand, barely a movement, just his fingers lifting an inch off the table, and she stopped. "Before we begin," he said, still watching her face, "I have a question." Clara's pulse jumped. This wasn't in the script. "Of course." Lucien leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. His gaze never left hers. "Who made you cry?" The room went silent. Clara felt her face flush hot, then cold. She was aware of David stiffening beside her, of Gregory Chen's eyebrows lifting slightly, of the bodyguard's expression not changing at all. "I'm sorry," she managed. "You've been crying," Lucien said, his tone factual, almost clinical. "Recently. The concealer helps, but your eyes are still red. And you're gripping that portfolio like it's the only thing keeping you upright." He tilted his head slightly. "So I'm asking, who made you cry?" Clara's brain short-circuited. Every professional instinct screamed at her to deflect, to smooth this over, to get back to the pitch. But something about the way he asked, not cruel, not invasive, just genuinely wanting to know, cracked something open in her chest. "That's not relevant to the presentation," she said, and her voice came out steadier than she expected. "It's relevant to me." Lucien's eyes didn't waver. "I don't do business with people I don't understand. And right now I'm trying to understand why the woman who's supposed to convince me to trust her with a $50 million campaign looks like she's barely holding herself together." David made a small noise, something between a cough and a protest. But Lucien's hand moved again, that same minimal gesture, and David went quiet. Clara felt something twist in her stomach. Anger, maybe. Or exhaustion. Or the horrible, freeing realization that she had absolutely nothing left to lose. "My fiancé," she said. The words came out flat, emotionless. "I found him in bed with my colleague this morning. About 3 hours ago, actually." She watched Lucien's expression, waiting for discomfort, for the awkward sympathy people always offered when you gave them more honesty than they bargained for. Instead, his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and something cold flickered through his eyes. "Where is he now?" Clara blinked. "What?" "Your fiancé. Where is he?" "At my apartment, I assume. He's been calling—" "Give me his name." The request was so unexpected that Clara actually laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that surprised her. "You don't need his name." "I'm very good at solving problems," Lucien said. "Give me his name and he won't be one anymore." There was no humor in his voice, no performance. He meant it. Clara felt something shift in the air between them, something electric and dangerous that made her heart kick hard against her ribs. This wasn't how client meetings went. This wasn't how anything went. "Mr. Moretti." "Lucien." She stopped. "What?" "If we're going to work together, you should call me Lucien." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his attention focused on her so completely it felt like they were the only two people in the room. "Now, show me what you've prepared." Clara stared at him. "You haven't even seen the pitch yet." "I don't need to." "You're offering me the contract without—" "I'm offering you the contract because you're standing here instead of falling apart," Lucien interrupted. "Because you came to this meeting even though your world imploded 3 hours ago. Because when I asked you an invasive question, you answered honestly instead of giving me corporate bullshit." He stood, and the movement was so smooth it looked effortless. "That tells me everything I need to know about how you work under pressure." Clara's mouth went dry. This wasn't real. This didn't happen. People didn't get $50 million contracts because they cried in the right meeting. "I still want to see the pitch," Lucien continued, buttoning his jacket with precise movements. "Not because I'm evaluating whether to hire you, because I want to know how you think." He glanced at David, then back to Clara. "Dinner, tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. We'll discuss strategy and timeline." Clara's brain finally caught up. "Tomorrow I'm hosting a charity gala for, I know, the Children's Hospital fundraiser. I saw the announcement." Lucien pulled a phone from his pocket, typed something quickly. "I'll attend. We can talk after." He moved toward the door and Gregory Chen stood smoothly to follow. The bodyguard was already there, opening it. "Mr. Moretti," David said, finding his voice. "We should formalize the contract details. Send the paperwork to Gregory. He'll handle it." Lucien paused in the doorway and looked back at Clara. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that made her breath catch. "One more thing, Ms. Bennett." "Yes?" "Stop answering his calls." It wasn't a suggestion. "And change your locks today. I'll have someone handle it if you don't have time." Then he was gone, and the room felt suddenly too large and too quiet. David turned to Clara, his expression somewhere between shocked and elated. "Did that just happen?" Clara sank into the nearest chair, her legs finally giving out. "I think so. He just gave us the Apex Foundation." David was pacing now, running his hands through his hair, without even seeing the pitch. "Clara, do you understand what this means? This is the biggest contract we've ever—" "He asked who made me cry," Clara said softly, staring at the door where Lucien had disappeared. David stopped pacing. "Yeah, that was unconventional. He offered to solve it, like a problem. Lucien Moretti doesn't do anything conventionally." David sat down across from her, his expression turning serious. "Clara, I need you to understand something. That man doesn't just build companies. He controls them, absolutely. And the rumors about how he started—" He shook his head. "Just be careful. This is an incredible opportunity, but Lucien Moretti isn't like other clients." Clara thought about the way Lucien had looked at her, the coldness in his eyes when she mentioned Marcus, the absolute certainty in his voice when he told her to change her locks. "What kind of client is he?" she asked. David was quiet for a moment. "The dangerous kind." Clara's apartment looked exactly the same as when she'd left it that morning, except now Marcus was sitting on the couch waiting for her. She stopped in the doorway, keys in her hand, and felt exhaustion wash over her so completely she almost turned around and left. "Clara." Marcus stood up fast, his expression somewhere between guilty and defensive. He was wearing the Columbia sweatshirt she'd bought him for his birthday, and somehow that detail made her angrier than anything else. "Baby, let me explain. Get out. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." Clara stepped inside and set her bag down on the entry table with careful precision. "You were fucking Vanessa in our bed. There's not really a lot of room for interpretation." Marcus flinched at the language. He'd always hated when she swore, said it wasn't ladylike. The memory of every time he'd corrected her crashed over Clara like a wave. "It was a mistake," he said, moving toward her. "Clara, I love you. We're getting married in 4 months. No, we're not." She pulled the engagement ring off her finger, a half-carat diamond he'd bought with money she'd lent him, and dropped it on the coffee table. It made a small, unsatisfying sound against the glass. Marcus stared at it. "You can't be serious. I walked in on you inside another woman. How much more serious do you want me to be?" "It didn't mean anything." His voice was rising now, that edge of anger she'd learned to recognize over the past year. "She came over to drop off files and we were talking, and it just happened." "For how long?" Marcus went still. "What? How long has it been happening?" Clara's voice was steady now, cold in a way she didn't recognize. "Because the way you two looked together, that wasn't a one-time mistake. That was comfortable." He didn't answer, and that was answer enough. Clara felt something crack in her chest, but it wasn't the sharp pain she'd expected. It was more like a door closing, final and clean. "I want you out of this apartment by tomorrow," she said. "I'll change the locks at noon. Anything you leave behind goes in the trash." "This is my apartment, too." "Actually, it's not. Check the lease, my name, my deposit, my furniture." She walked past him to the bedroom, started pulling his clothes out of the closet. "You've been living here rent-free for 18 months while you built your startup, which, by the way, is never going to happen. You can't just—" Clara spun around, arms full of his shirts. "Yes, I can, and I am." She threw the clothes at him, watched them hit his chest and fall to the floor. "Get out, Marcus. I have a locksmith coming in 2 hours." She didn't, but she would. Lucian's words echoed in her head. "Change your locks today." Marcus bent to gather his clothes, and when he straightened, his expression had shifted into something uglier. "You're going to regret this. You need me, Clara. Who's going to want you? You work 80 hours a week, you're married to your job, the job that's been paying your bills? You're not exactly a prize, he continued, his voice sharp now, mean in the way he got when he felt cornered. You think you're so successful, but you're just a workaholic with control issues. Vanessa actually makes time for get out. The voice didn't come from Clara. She turned and saw Lucien Moretti standing in her apartment doorway, and her brain stuttered trying to make sense of it. He was still in the same suit from the meeting, but he'd lost the tie, and the top button of his shirt was undone. Behind him stood the bodyguard from earlier, filling the doorframe like a wall. Marcus looked between them, confusion and alarm crossing his face. Who the hell are you? Lucien stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his eyes moving over the apartment in one quick, assessing sweep before settling on Marcus. Someone who's giving you 30 seconds to leave before I have you removed. This is my apartment. No, Lucien said quietly. It's not. It's Clara's apartment. You're trespassing, and if you're not out that door in... He glanced at his watch. 23 seconds. I'll call the police and press charges on her behalf. Marcus turned to Clara, his face red. You called him? You're fucking this guy already? The bodyguard moved, but Lucien stopped him with a hand. 15 seconds. Clara, leave, she said, and her voice didn't shake. Now. Marcus grabbed the rest of his clothes, stuffing them under his arm, his movements jerky with anger. You're going to regret this. Both of you. 10 seconds, Lucien said. Marcus slammed the door on his way out, hard enough to rattle the frame. The silence that followed felt enormous. Clara stood in the middle of her living room, still holding one of Marcus's shirts, and tried to remember how to form words. How did you know where I live? I asked your boss. Lucien's expression was calm, unbothered by how insane that sounded. He was concerned, so was I. You can't just... Clara stopped, regrouped. You shouldn't be here. Probably not. Lucien looked at the bodyguard. Vincent, wait outside. Vincent nodded and stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him with a soft click. Lucien turned back to Clara, and she was suddenly, acutely aware that they were alone in her apartment, that he was standing in her space like he had every right to be there, that she was still wearing the same clothes she'd had on during the worst morning of her life. The locksmith will be here in 40 minutes, he said. I called from the car. He'll change all the locks and give you new keys. Clara's mouth opened, then closed. You can't just do that. I already did. I don't need you to... Yes, Lucien interrupted, his voice dropping lower. You do. Because you're exhausted, and you're hurt, and you shouldn't have to deal with this alone. Something in Clara's chest twisted hard. She set the shirt down on the back of the couch because her hands were starting to shake again. Why are you doing this? Lucien was quiet for a moment, studying her face with that same intense focus from the meeting. Because I asked you a question this morning, and you answered honestly when you didn't have to. Because you showed up for that meeting instead of falling apart, and because... He stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. Because no one should have to come home to that kind of ambush after the day you've had. Clara felt tears pressing behind her eyes and forced them back. She'd cried enough today. I don't know you. No, he agreed. But you will. There was something in the way he said it, not a threat, not even a promise exactly, just a statement of fact, that made Clara's pulse jump. The gala tomorrow, Lucien continued, shifting gears so smoothly it took her a second to catch up. The Children's Hospital fundraiser. You're the organizer? Co-organizer, Clara corrected automatically. I've been planning it for 6 months. What's the goal? $200,000. We're trying to fund a new pediatric wing. You'll hit $400,000 by the end of the night. Clara blinked. That's not... I'll match whatever you raise, Lucien said. Dollar for dollar. And I'll bring people who can write the kind of checks you need. It took Clara a moment to process what he was saying. $400,000. For a project she'd been breaking herself over, begging for sponsors, fighting for every donation. Why? She asked again. Lucien moved closer, and Clara's breath caught. He stopped just inside her personal space, near enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made her think of boardrooms and power. Because you care about it, he said simply. That's rare. People who actually care about the things they build instead of just the credit they get for building them. He reached out, and for a second Clara thought he was going to touch her face, but his hand stopped short, Get some rest. The locksmith will handle everything. Vincent will wait outside until it's done. I don't need a bodyguard.
Vincent isn't for you. He's for anyone stupid enough to come back here tonight. Lucienne stepped away, and Clara felt the distance like a physical thing. I'll see you tomorrow at the gala. He was at the door before Clara found her voice again. Lucienne. He turned back. Thank you, she said, and meant it more than she'd meant anything in hours. Something shifted in his expression, too quick for her to name. Don't thank me yet. Then he was gone, and Clara was alone in her apartment that would soon have new locks, courtesy of a man she'd met 6 hours ago. She sank onto the couch and finally let herself cry. The gala was being held at the Metropolitan Club, and Clara arrived 2 hours early to oversee setup. She'd barely slept, kept jerking awake every time she heard a noise, expecting Marcus to come back even though she knew the new locks would keep him out. Lucian had been right about the locksmith. The man had shown up exactly on time, changed everything efficiently, and refused payment. Already handled, he'd said, which meant Lucian had paid him in advance. Clara didn't know what to do with that. Didn't know what to do with any of this. The ballroom looked perfect. White tablecloths, gold accents, centerpieces that had cost too much but looked worth it. A stage at the front for speeches, a bar along one wall, windows overlooking Fifth Avenue. Clara was adjusting place cards when her co-organizer, Michelle Park, appeared at her elbow. Holy shit, Michelle breathed. Tell me that's not who I think it is. Clara looked up and felt her stomach drop. Lucien Moretti stood in the entrance to the ballroom, surveying the space with the same assessing look he'd given her apartment. He was in a tuxedo this time, and Clara's brain momentarily short-circuited trying to process how unfair it was that someone could look that good. Behind him stood 3 other men, all in similarly expensive suits, all carrying themselves with the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to worry about money. That's Lucien Moretti, Michelle said, grabbing Clara's arm. And that's James Chen from Chen Holdings. And, oh my God, is that Robert Ashford? Clara, what the hell is happening? Clara had no idea. The gala didn't start for another 90 minutes. Guests weren't supposed to be here yet. Lucien spotted her and started walking over, and Clara became acutely aware that she was wearing jeans and a planning committee t-shirt, her hair in a messy bun, no makeup. Ms. Bennett, he said when he reached her, and there was something almost warm in his eyes. You're early. I'm always early for events I'm running. Clara glanced at the men behind him. You're very early. I wanted to see the space before it filled up, and I brought some people who might be interested in your cause. He gestured to the man on his right. James Chen, he's been looking for a good healthcare initiative to support. James stepped forward with an easy smile and offered his hand. Ms. Bennett, Lucian's told me about your pediatric wing project. I'd like to discuss a donation. Clara shook his hand, feeling like she'd fallen into some alternate reality. Of course. Thank you for coming. The introductions continued. Robert Ashford, who ran a pharmaceutical company. David Wu, who managed a private equity firm. Each of them wealthy enough to fund the entire project with pocket change. Each of them here because Lucien had asked them to be. When the others drifted away to examine the silent auction items, Lucien stayed. His eyes moved over Clara's face with that same careful attention that made her feel exposed. You didn't sleep, he said. It wasn't a question, but Clara answered anyway. Not much. Did he come back? No? Something in Lucien's expression relaxed slightly. Good. If he does, I'll call the police, Clara finished. I don't need you to fight my battles. I know you don't need me to. Lucien's voice dropped lower. But I'm going to anyway. Clara opened her mouth to argue, but Michelle appeared again, slightly breathless. Clara, we need you in the kitchen. There's an issue with the catering. Clara wanted to stay. Wanted to figure out what was happening between her and this man who'd inserted himself into her life with absolute confidence. But duty called, and she'd never been good at ignoring it. I have to. Go, Lucien said. I'll be here when you're done. It sounded like a promise. By the time the gala officially started, Clara had changed into the floor-length navy dress she'd been saving for months, fixed her makeup, and consumed enough coffee to fuel a small army. She stood near the entrance greeting guests,
her face aching from smiling, her brain tracking 17 different moving parts. The ballroom had filled with Manhattan's social elite, all of them dressed in designer everything, holding champagne flutes and making the kind of small talk that sounded pleasant but meant nothing. Clara had done this before, had played this game, worked these rooms, but tonight felt different. Tonight she kept feeling Lucian's eyes on her from across the space, tracking her movements with an attention that made her skin warm. Clara Bennett? She turned and felt her stomach sink. Vanessa Cho stood there in a red dress that probably cost more than Clara's rent, her smile sharp and uncomfortable. Vanessa. Clara's voice came out colder than she intended. I didn't know you'd be here. Marcus got us tickets weeks ago. Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. Before, well, you know. Clara did know. Knew that Marcus had probably bought those tickets with money she'd given him for his business expenses. He's at the bar, Vanessa continued, and there was something almost cruel in her tone. In case you wanted to avoid that area. Clara felt anger spike through her exhaustion. Actually, I'm fine. You two enjoy your evening. She started to walk away, but Vanessa caught her arm. Clara, look, I'm sorry about how you found out, but Marcus and I, we're actually really good together. And honestly, you were never really there for him. Always working, always focused on the next project. Clara pulled her arm free, her voice dropping to something deadly quiet. You're right. I was working. Working to pay the bills while he sat on my couch pretending to build a company. Working to build a career instead of sleeping with my colleagues' partners. She smiled, and it wasn't kind. But you're welcome to him. Just know that when his startup fails, and it will fail, he's going to expect you to pay his rent. She walked away before Vanessa could respond, her heart hammering. The bar. Of course Marcus was at the bar. She needed a drink, but she'd be damned if she'd let him see her avoid part of her own event. Clara changed direction and headed straight for it. Marcus saw her coming. She watched his expression shift from surprise to guilt to something harder. He was with two other guys Clara didn't recognize, all of them in rented tuxedos that didn't quite fit. Clara, Marcus said, his voice too loud. Didn't expect to see you here. Clara stared at him. It's my event, Marcus. Right, your event, your career, your everything. He was drunk, she realized, his words sliding together slightly. Always so fucking perfect, aren't you? His friends shifted uncomfortably, but Marcus kept going. You know what your problem is? You never made time for us. For me. Always the job, always the next big thing. I made time, Clara said quietly, aware that people were starting to notice. I made time for 3 years while you lived in my apartment and spent my money and promised you were building something, and you thanked me by fucking someone else in my bed. One of Marcus's friends winced. Man, maybe we should... You want to know what's actually perfect? Marcus continued, ignoring him. Vanessa. She actually cares about me. She doesn't make me feel like a failure just because I'm not pulling down 6 figures. Is there a problem here? Lucien's voice cut through Marcus's rant like a blade. Clara turned and found him standing just behind her, his expression calm but his eyes absolutely cold. Marcus's face went red. This doesn't concern you. Actually, it does. Lucien moved to stand beside Clara, and she felt the solid warmth of him like an anchor. You're disrupting Ms. Bennett's event. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You can't kick me out. I have a ticket. Vincent. The bodyguard appeared from somewhere in the crowd, moving with frightening efficiency. Sir, please escort Mr. Lucien glanced at Clara. Hayes, she provided quietly. Mr. Hayes and his party out of the building. They're no longer welcome. Marcus's expression went from red to purple. You can't do that. I just did. Lucien's voice never rose, but something in his tone made Marcus take a step back. You have 30 seconds to leave voluntarily. After that, Vincent will help you. Vincent moved closer, and suddenly Marcus's friends were pulling him toward the exit, mumbling apologies. This isn't over, Marcus shouted as they hauled him away. Clara, this isn't fucking over. But it was. Clara knew it was, and she felt lighter than she had in months. The crowd that had gathered to watch started dispersing, turning back to their conversations with the practiced ease of people who'd seen 100 society dramas. Clara became aware that her hands were shaking. You didn't have to... Yes, Lucien said simply. I did. He was still standing close enough that she could feel the heat of him, could smell that same dark cologne that made her head swim. Come with me, he said, his hand moving to the small of her back. Not pushing, just guiding. You need a minute. Clara let him lead her out of the ballroom, through a side door she hadn't even noticed, into a small private sitting room lined with books. The noise from the gala became muffled. Clara's breathing started to even out. I'm fine, she said, but her voice shook on the words. You're not. Lucien closed the door, giving them privacy. And that's allowed. Clara laughed, sharp and bitter. I'm supposed to be out there, running this thing, making sure everything's perfect. Michelle has it handled. I saw her taking charge the second we left. He was right. Michelle was probably having the time of her life managing the crisis. Clara sank into one of the leather chairs, suddenly exhausted again. I'm sorry. That was not your fault. Lucien sat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. He's a child throwing a tantrum because he lost his meal ticket. The bluntness of it startled a real laugh out of Clara. That's harsh. It's accurate. Lucien's expression softened slightly. Clara, you need to understand something. Men like that, they don't love you. They love what you provide. The moment you stop providing it, they find someone else who will. Clara looked at him, really looked at him, at the sharp intelligence in his dark eyes, the careful control in every movement. You sound like you speak from experience. I do. Different context, but the principle's the same. Lucien was quiet for a moment. I built my first company when I was 22, made my first million at 24, and suddenly I had 100 new friends who all needed something. What did you do? Cut them all off. Every single one. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who only want what I can give them. Clara thought about Marcus, about the way he'd always positioned her job as the problem, her success as the thing hurting their relationship, about how she'd believed him, even tried to work less, be more available, and it still hadn't been enough. I'm tired of being what people need, she said quietly. Then stop. Lucien's voice was firm. Be what you want instead. What if I don't know what that is yet? You will. He stood, offered her his hand. But first, you're going to go back out there and show everyone who tried to make you small exactly how big you actually are. Clara took his hand, felt the strength in his grip as he pulled her to her feet. They were close again, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Why are you helping me? She asked for the third time in 2 days. Lucien's jaw tightened slightly. His free hand came up, his knuckles brushing her cheek so lightly she almost thought she'd imagined it. Because the moment you walked into that conference room yesterday, trying so hard to hold yourself together, he stopped, something complicated crossing his face. Because I know what it looks like when someone's been underestimated their entire life, and I'm tired of watching it happen. Clara's breath caught. There was something in his eyes, something dark and intense that made her pulse race. Lucien. A knock on the door interrupted whatever she'd been about to say. Michelle's voice filtered through. Clara? The auction's about to start. We need you. Lucien stepped back, the moment breaking. Duty calls. Clara straightened her dress, checked her reflection in a mirror on the wall. Her makeup had held up, her hair still looked deliberate. She looked like someone in control. She was starting to believe it. Thank you, she said, turning back to him, for everything. Don't thank me yet, Lucien said again, echoing his words from her apartment. We haven't gotten to the interesting part. Clara didn't know what that meant, but something in her chest tightened with anticipation. She opened the door and stepped back into her event, back into the role she'd built for herself. But she could feel Lucien behind her, his presence solid and certain, and for the first time in days, Clara didn't feel alone. The auction went better than she could have imagined. Items she'd expected to go for hundreds sold for thousands. People who'd never donated before were suddenly writing checks that made her eyes water. And every time she glanced toward the back of the room, she found Lucien watching her with that same dark, focused attention that made her feel like the only person in the room. When the final total was announced, $437,000, more than double their goal, the ballroom erupted in applause. Clara stood at the microphone, trying to find words that felt adequate, and realized she was crying. Happy tears this time. Victorious tears. "Thank you," she managed, her voice thick. "All of you. You're changing lives tonight. You're giving children a chance they wouldn't have had otherwise. That's—" Her voice broke slightly. "That's everything?" More applause. Michelle was crying too, grabbing Clara's hand and squeezing it hard. The crowd started to disperse, heading toward the after-party in the adjoining room. Clara was swept up in congratulations, and people wanting to talk to her, touch her, claim some piece of this victory. But through it all, she kept searching the crowd for dark eyes and a suit that cost more than her car. She found him near the windows, alone, watching the city below. Clara made her excuses and crossed to him, her heels clicking on marble. "You're hiding," she said when she reached him. Lucien glanced at her, one corner of his mouth lifting slightly. "I'm observing." "Same thing. Not quite." He turned to face her fully, and the city lights behind him created a halo effect that should have looked ridiculous, but somehow didn't. "You're extraordinary when you're in your element. Did you know that?" Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm just extraordinary," he repeated firmly. "Own it." She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process the way he looked at her, like she was something rare and worth protecting. "The total tonight," she started. "You matched it. That's $400,000. $437,000, Lucien corrected. "I don't do anything by halves. That's insane." "That's what money's for. Using it for things that matter." He was quiet for a moment. "My mother died in a hospital that couldn't afford the equipment she needed. I was 12. I've been looking for ways to make sure that doesn't happen to other families ever since." Clara's chest tightened. "Lucien, I'm so sorry." He shrugged, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "It was a long time ago. But it's why I built the Apex Foundation, why I take healthcare initiatives seriously." His eyes met hers. "Why I'm glad you're the one running this project." Something passed between them, something heavy and electric that made Clara's breath catch. "Dinner," Lucien said abruptly. "You promised me dinner." "I didn't promise." "I'm claiming it anyway." He offered his arm. "There's a restaurant 3 blocks from here, best Italian food in the city. And I'd very much like to buy you a meal that doesn't involve rubber chicken and fundraising speeches." Clara should say no, should maintain professional boundaries, should remember that this man was her client and she'd only met him 48 hours ago and nothing about this was normal or safe. But she'd spent 3 years being careful and appropriate and perfect, and where had it gotten her? She took his arm. "Okay." Lucien's smile was small but genuine, and it transformed his entire face. "Good. Let's go before someone asks you to give another speech." They slipped out through a side exit, and Clara felt like she was escaping something, not the gala, not the pressure, but some older version of herself that she'd been carrying around like dead weight. The night air was cool against her skin, and beside her Lucien Moretti walked like a man who owned the city. Maybe he did. And maybe, just maybe, Clara was ready to find out exactly what that meant. The restaurant was called Vesuvio, tucked into a side street that Clara had walked past 100 times without noticing. The kind of place that didn't need a sign because the people who mattered already knew where it was. A man in a crisp white shirt greeted Lucien by name the moment they walked in, didn't even glance at a reservation book before leading them to a corner table that somehow felt both public and completely private. "Mr. Moretti, your usual table." "Thank you, Angelo." Lucien waited until Clara sat before taking his own seat, and she tried to remember the last time Marcus had done that. Couldn't. The lighting was low, candles flickering on white tablecloths, and the smell of garlic and wine and something baking made Clara's stomach remind her she'd barely eaten all day. "You come here often," she said, and immediately winced at how it sounded. Lucien's mouth quirked. "My family owns it. My uncle runs the kitchen." Of course they did. Clara was starting to understand that Lucien Moretti didn't just exist in the world, he owned pieces of it. A waiter appeared with wine, poured without asking, and disappeared again. "I should probably know more about you," Clara said, wrapping her hands around the glass, "considering you know where I live and how much money is in my bank account." "I don't know how much money is in your bank account. Yet." Lucien smiled, a real one this time, that made him look younger. "Yet." He took a sip of wine, watching her over the rim. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Nothing. I don't know." Clara laughed, feeling the exhaustion of the past 2 days finally catching up. Why don't you start with why a man who runs a financial empire cares about a hospital charity gala? I told you, my mother. There's more to it than that. Lucien was quiet for a moment, his finger tracing the stem of his wine glass. My mother was a nurse, immigrated from Sicily when she was 19, worked at Mount Sinai for 20 years. She believed healthcare was a right, not a privilege. He paused. When she got sick, the hospitals she dedicated her life to couldn't save her because they didn't have the equipment, couldn't afford it. Budget cuts. Clara's chest tightened. Lucien. I was 12, he continued, his voice matter-of-fact in a way that somehow made it worse. And I decided that money was the only thing that actually mattered. Not kindness, not dedication, not working yourself to death for people who didn't value it. Just money, power, control. So you built an empire. So I built an empire. He met her eyes. And then I spent the next 20 years proving that 12-year-old right. There was something dark in his expression, something that suggested the road from there to here hadn't been clean or easy. What changed? Clara asked quietly. Nothing changed. I just got better at choosing what to use that power for. Lucien leaned back as Angelo himself appeared with plates Clara hadn't ordered. My uncle thinks you're too thin. He sent enough food for 6 people. Clara looked down at the spread pasta that smelled like heaven, bread still warm from the oven, vegetables glistening with olive oil. Does he do this for all your dates? The word slipped out before she could stop it, and she felt her face flush. This isn't a date, Lucien said, but there was something in his eyes that contradicted the words. This is dinner with a colleague I happen to find fascinating. Colleague. For now. The way he said it made Clara's pulse jump. She picked up her fork to have something to do with her hands. You're very direct. Life's too short to pretend. Lucien started eating with the easy confidence of someone completely comfortable in his own skin. I spent years playing games, saying what people wanted to hear, building relationships based on what I could get from them. I'm done with that. So now you just say what you mean. Now I just say what I mean. He watched her take a bite of pasta, and something satisfied crossed his face when her eyes widened. Good? This is incredible. Uncle Tony doesn't believe in mediocrity. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, and Clara felt some of the tension in her shoulders finally release. This was the first time in 48 hours she'd felt like she could breathe. Your turn, Lucien said eventually. Tell me something real. Clara swallowed her wine, considering. Like what? Like why you're so good at what you do. The gala tonight, that wasn't just planning, that was passion. She didn't expect the question to hit as hard as it did. Clara set down her fork, trying to find the right words. My little brother had leukemia when he was 7, she said finally. Spent 18 months in and out of hospitals. And the only thing that made it bearable were the people who cared, the nurses who remembered his name, the volunteers who brought books, the doctors who took time to explain things so he wasn't scared. She looked up at Lucien. He's fine now, healthy, but I never forgot what that kind of care meant. So when I can help create that for other families, I do. Lucien's expression had shifted into something intense, focused. What's your brother's name? Danny. He's 24 now, teaching high school English in Boston. You're close. Very. Clara smiled, thinking about him. He called me 17 times yesterday. I finally answered this morning and told him I was fine. Were you lying? Completely. Lucien's laugh was low and genuine. At least you're honest about your dishonesty. It's a gift. They fell back into eating, into conversation that flowed easier than it should between 2 people who'd known each other less than 3 days. Lucien told her about building his first company in a basement apartment with money he'd scraped together from 3 jobs. Clara told him about her first campaign, a disaster involving a typo that had cost her boss $50,000 and almost her career. But you survived it, Lucien said. I survived it by working twice as hard as everyone else for the next 2 years, proving I was more than one mistake. And now you're the senior creative director at a firm that just landed the Apex Foundation contract. Clara felt a flush of pride despite herself. Now I'm the senior creative director who has no idea how to actually execute that contract. Yes, you do. Lucien's voice was certain. You're just scared you'll fail. The bluntness of it stole her breath. That's true. He leaned forward, his intensity sharpening. Clara, I've built 17 companies, failed at 4 of them spectacularly, lost millions. Had people tell me I was finished, that I'd never recover. His eyes locked on hers. And every single time, the fear of failure was worse than the actual failure. Because failure is just data. It tells you what doesn't work so you can find what does. That's easy to say when you have millions to fall back on. I didn't always. Something hard flickered across his face. The first company I lost, I was 26. Had leveraged everything, my apartment, my car, maxed out every credit card. When it went under, I had $17 in my bank account and collections agencies calling every hour. Clara stared at him. What did you do? Went back to work. Started over. Built something better. He paused. The difference between people who succeed and people who don't isn't talent or luck. It's willingness to keep going when everything's falling apart. There was a story there, something darker than he was saying, but before Clara could push, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it reflexively and felt her stomach drop. Marcus. Again. The text preview was visible. You're making a huge mistake. We need to talk about... Lucian's hand moved, his fingers closing over her phone. May I? Clara should say no. Should maintain some boundary, but she was tired of boundaries that only seemed to protect everyone else. Yes. Lucien picked up the phone, read the message, and his expression went cold in a way that made Clara's breath catch. He typed something quickly, handed the phone back. Clara looked at the screen. Lucien had replied, "This is her attorney. Any further contact will be considered harassment and prosecuted accordingly. Delete this number." "You're not my attorney," Claire said. "Gregory is. I'll have him send an official cease and desist tomorrow." Lucien's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "Block his number." Clara stared at the phone, at Marcus's name, at 3 years of her life reduced to a contact she was about to erase. She blocked it. "There's," Lucien said, satisfaction in his voice. "Problem solved." "You can't just solve all my problems." "Watch me." Clara laughed despite herself, sharp and startled. "You're insane." "I'm effective." He picked up his wine glass. "There's a difference." The waiter returned with dessert, tiramisu that looked handmade and smelled like coffee and cream. Clara didn't remember ordering it, but she was starting to understand that at Vesuvio things simply appeared when Lucien wanted them to. "Tell me about the Apex Foundation," Claire said, digging into the dessert. "What's the vision?" Lucien's expression shifted, the intensity focusing into something almost hungry. Transforming how healthcare accessibility works in underserved communities. Not charity, infrastructure. Real, sustainable change. That's ambitious. That's the point. He leaned forward, and Clara could see the businessman now, the empire builder. "Charity is putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs surgery. I want to change the system. And you need a campaign that reflects that. I need a campaign that makes people understand what's possible, that shows them this isn't just another rich person's pet project. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about healthcare as a human right." Clara's mind was already racing, ideas forming faster than she could catch them. "You need stories. Real people whose lives changed because they had access, not statistics, faces." "Yes." Lucien's eyes lit up. "Exactly that. And we need to show the infrastructure. The clinics, the equipment, the training programs, make people see the scope. We'll need a media strategy that reaches beyond the usual circles." They were both leaning over the table now, talking faster, ideas building on each other in that electric way that happened when two people were perfectly in sync. Clara pulled out her phone, started making notes. "I'm thinking a multi-platform approach. Video series featuring patients and providers, social media campaign with real-time updates from the clinics, maybe a partnership with a documentary filmmaker. I know someone at Sundance," Lucien interrupted, "could get us in for the festival circuit if we time it right." "Seriously? I don't joke about connections." He was smiling now, really smiling, and Clara realized this was what he looked like when he was passionate about something. Younger, lighter, dangerous in a completely different way. They talked through dessert, through coffee, through the restaurant emptying around them until Angelo finally appeared with a gentle cough. Mr. Moretti, it's past midnight. Lucian glanced at his watch, surprise crossing his face. So it is. He looked at Clara. We should go. Clara blinked, startled. She'd lost track of time completely, lost in the planning and the conversation and the way Lucian's mind worked at the same speed as hers. Outside, the city had quieted to its late-night rhythm. A few cars passing, distant sirens, the kind of sounds that made New York feel intimate instead of overwhelming. Where do you live? Sicilian asked. Clara gave him the address, and he nodded. Vincent will drive you. The black SUV was already waiting at the curb, Vincent behind the wheel, looking alert despite the hour. I can take a cab, Clara protested. You could, but you won't. Lucian opened the back door for her. It's late, and I want to make sure you get home safely. Clara should argue, should maintain independence, should do any number of things that responsible adults did. But she was tired, and her feet hurt, and the idea of sitting in the back of a comfortable car instead of hunting for a taxi sounded like heaven. Thank you, she said, climbing in. Lucien leaned against the door, not quite ready to close it. The streetlight behind him created shadows across his face, made his eyes look darker. Clara. Yes? This wasn't a date. Her chest tightened with something like disappointment. I know, but the next time I take you to dinner, he continued, his voice dropping lower, it will be. Before she could respond, he closed the door and stepped back. Vincent pulled into traffic, and Clara watched through the rear window as Lucian stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, watching her leave. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that she somehow knew was him. Sleep well. We have work to do tomorrow. Clara smiled despite herself and typed back, How did you get this number? The response came immediately. I told you, I'm very good at solving problems. She was still smiling when Vincent pulled up to her building. The new locks gleamed in the hallway light, and Clara felt a surge of something warm knowing Lucien had made sure she'd be safe before she even knew she needed to be. Inside, her apartment felt different, emptier without Marcus's things cluttering the space, but also lighter, like she could finally breathe. Clara kicked off her heels, peeled off the dress that had cost too much but had been worth it, and fell into bed in just her underwear and the camisole she'd worn underneath. Her phone buzzed again. Not Lucien this time. Michelle. Girl. What was that tonight? You and Lucien Moretti looked like you were planning world domination over dessert. Clara laughed and typed back. We were planning a campaign. It's work. That was not work. That was chemistry. You're seeing things. I'm seeing a man who couldn't take his eyes off you all night. And I'm seeing you look happy for the first time in months. Don't overthink this. Clara stared at the message, at the truth buried in Michelle's words. She had been happy tonight. Genuinely, completely happy in a way she couldn't remember being with Marcus. Even before the cheating, before the betrayal, had she ever felt this alive with him? Her phone buzzed a third time. Lucian again. I'm serious about the work tomorrow. My office, 9 a.m. Bring your ideas. Clara's pulse jumped. She typed, That's early. I don't sleep much. Neither do you, clearly, since you're answering texts at 1 a.m. She smiled and sent back, Fine. 9 a.m. Where's your office? The address came through immediately, followed by, Vincent will pick you up at 8:30. Don't argue. Clara did argue, typing out 3 different responses about how she could get herself to Midtown, but deleted all of them. Instead, she sent, Thank you. His response was just, Stop thanking me. She fell asleep with her phone still in her hand, and for the first time in days, she didn't dream about Marcus or Vanessa or the betrayal that had shattered her life. She dreamed about dark eyes and dangerous smiles, and a man who solved problems like other people breathed. Vincent was outside her building at exactly 8:30, looking as alert as he had at midnight. Clara had dressed carefully, professional but not trying too hard, a charcoal suit that made her feel powerful, hair pulled back in a way that said she meant business. The drive to Lucien's office took 20 minutes through morning traffic, and Clara spent it reviewing her notes, trying to ignore the nervous energy building in her stomach. The building was in Midtown, all glass and steel rising 40 stories, with Moretti Holdings stamped across the entrance in letters that managed to look both elegant and intimidating. Vincent walked her through security, into an elevator that required a key card, up to the 40th floor where the doors opened onto a reception area that looked like it belonged in a museum. A woman in her 50s with perfect posture and a no-nonsense expression looked up from behind a desk that probably cost more than Clara's car. "Ms. Bennett, Mr. Moretti is expecting you." Her voice was crisp, professional. "Conference room 3. I'll show you." Clara followed her down a hallway lined with abstract art that was definitely original, past offices with glass walls where people worked with the focused intensity of soldiers, into a corner conference room with views that made her breath catch. Lucian stood at the windows, phone to his ear, gesturing with his free hand in a way that suggested whoever was on the other end was about to have a very bad day. "I don't care what the timeline was," he said, his voice sharp. "You promised delivery by the 15th. It's the 23rd. So either you honor the contract or I find someone who will." He paused, listening. No extensions. You have 48 hours or we're done." He ended the call without saying goodbye and turned to face Clara. "Good morning." "Remind me never to miss a deadline with you," Clara said. Lucien's expression softened slightly. "You won't. You're not like them." He gestured to the table where someone had laid out coffee, pastries, and what looked like a full catered breakfast. "Eat. We're going to be here for a while." Clara poured coffee, grateful for something to do with her hands. "What's the plan?" "The plan is we build something that matters." Lucian sat at the head of the table, and Clara took the seat to his right. "Show me what you were thinking last night." Clara pulled out her tablet, called up the notes she'd been refining since 1 a.m. "Okay, so the core of the campaign needs to be authenticity. People are exhausted by corporate charity that feels performative. They want to see real impact." "Agreed." "So we lead with the patients. Find 5 to 7 people whose lives were directly changed by access to healthcare. Not just saved, but transformed. Show them before and after. Let them tell their own stories." Lucien was already nodding. "We have a clinic in Brooklyn that's been operational for 6 months. I can get you patient contacts, release forms, full access." "Perfect. Then we pair that with the infrastructure piece. Show the clinics being built, the equipment being installed, the providers being trained. Make people understand the scope." "What about the ask?" Clara looked up. "What do you mean?" "Every campaign has an ask. What do you want people to do after they see this?" Lucien's eyes were sharp, focused entirely on her. "Donate, volunteer, change their voting patterns?" Clara thought about it, turning the question over. "All of it. But the primary ask is awareness. I want people to understand that healthcare accessibility isn't a charity issue. It's a structural one. And that means they need to demand change from their representatives, their employers, their communities. So we're not just raising money, we're building a movement." "Exactly." Lucian smiled, and there was something almost predatory in it. "Good. I like ambitious." They worked for the next 4 hours, building out strategy and timeline and budget. Gregory Chen appeared at some point with contract details, stayed for 30 minutes going over legal parameters, then disappeared again. At noon, Lucien's assistant brought in lunch without being asked, sushi that looked professionally prepared and probably was. "Do you always work like this?" Clara asked, taking a break to eat. "Like what?" "Like you're trying to fit 48 hours into 24. Lucian set down his chopsticks, considering the question. "When I was building my first company, I had a partner. Smart guy, good with people, terrible with follow-through. He kept saying we had time, we could pace ourselves, no need to rush." He paused. "He was wrong. We lost our first major investor because we missed a deadline by 3 days. 3 days. And that investor went to a competitor who moved faster. What happened to the partner? I bought him out. Learned that the only person you can trust to get something done right is yourself." Lucian looked at her. "But that's not quite true anymore." Clara's pulse jumped. "No? No. Now I trust people who've proven they move at the same speed I do." His eyes held hers. "Like you." The compliment landed harder than it should have. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks and forced herself to look away, back at her notes. "We should talk about the documentary angle," she said, changing the subject. "You mentioned someone at Sundance?" "Rachel Okonkwo. She's been looking for her next project. I'll set up a call." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Lucian's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it. His expression darkened. "Excuse me for a moment." He stepped out of the conference room, and Clara could see him through the glass wall, his posture tense as he talked to whoever had called. She took the opportunity to catch her breath, to try to process what was happening. This was work, professional. A client relationship that just happened to involve intense eye contact and midnight dinners, and a man who seemed to see straight through every defense she'd ever built. Lucian came back in, and the tension in his shoulders was visible. "Problem?" Clara asked. "Nothing I can't handle." But his tone suggested otherwise. He sat back down, ran a hand through his hair in a gesture that felt uncharacteristically uncertain. "My father wants to meet you." Clara blinked. "Your father?" "Antonio Moretti. He's—" Lucian paused, seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "He's interested in the foundation work. Wants to meet the creative team." There was something he wasn't saying, something in the careful way he was watching her reaction. "Okay," Clara said slowly. "When?" "Tonight. Dinner at his house in Brooklyn." "That's short notice." "That's how he operates." Lucian's jaw was tight. "Clara, you should know something before you agree. My father he's complicated. And the way I built this empire, the connections I used to get here, not all of them came from clean places." Clara's heart started beating faster. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying my family has history, ties to people and organizations that operate outside traditional business structures." He met her eyes directly. "And if you're going to work with me, be in my life in any capacity, you need to understand what that means." The air in the conference room felt suddenly heavier. Clara thought about the way Lucian commanded rooms, the way Vincent moved like someone trained for violence, the casual display of power and control. "Are you telling me your family is connected to organized crime?" she asked quietly. "I'm telling you my family came from Sicily with nothing and built something in a city that doesn't give anything away for free. And sometimes the people who help you do that expect loyalty in return." It wasn't a denial. It was something more honest and more dangerous. Clara should be scared, should be standing up and walking out and finding a client who came with less baggage. But instead she heard herself ask, "Are you still involved in that world?" "No." Lucien's voice was firm. "I cut those ties years ago, built everything I have now legally, cleanly, but my father, he still has relationships, still operates in ways I don't agree with." He paused. "He's also dying. Cancer. 6 months, maybe less." Clara's chest tightened. "Lucien, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. We're not close. Haven't been since I was 16 and told him I wanted nothing to do with his business." His expression was carefully neutral. "But he wants to meet you, wants to see who I'm working with, and I won't lie to you about what you're walking into." Clara sat back, trying to process. This was insane. This was a complication she absolutely did not need in her life right now. But she looked at Lucien, at the tension in his shoulders and the careful way he was watching her, and realized he was giving her a choice. Full information, complete honesty, the chance to walk away before things got more complicated. Marcus had never given her that, had never trusted her with the truth about anything. "What time is dinner?" Clara asked. Something in Lucien's expression shifted, surprise and relief and something warmer. 7. I'll pick you up at 6:30. "Okay, you're sure?" "No," Clara admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." Lucien's smile was small but genuine. "That's becoming a pattern with you." "Apparently." They went back to work, but something had shifted between them. Some barrier had come down, leaving just the raw honesty of two people who decided to trust each other despite every reason not to. At 5 o'clock, Lucian called it. "Go home. Rest. Wear something comfortable tonight. My father doesn't care about formal." Clara packed up her things, and Lucien walked her to the elevator. Vincent appeared from somewhere, already holding car keys. 6:30, Lucien reminded her. "I'll be ready." The elevator doors closed, and Clara leaned back against the wall, trying to steady her breathing. She was having dinner with a dying man who might or might not be connected to the mob, because she'd agreed to work with, to trust, someone she'd known less than a week. Her phone buzzed. "Michelle, lunch tomorrow? I need details on whatever's happening with you and Mr. Tall, Dark, and Intense." Clara smiled despite the chaos in her head and typed back, "Tomorrow. I promise." At home, she showered and changed into dark jeans and a soft sweater that felt like armor and comfort all at once. She was staring at her closet, second-guessing everything, when her buzzer rang. 6:30 exactly. Clara grabbed her jacket and went downstairs to find Lucien waiting by the SUV, and the sight of him in jeans and a black Henley instead of a suit did something unfortunate to her pulse. "You look nervous," he said as she climbed in. "I am nervous. I'm about to have dinner with your father, who you've strongly implied has mafia connections." "I didn't say mafia. You also didn't say he wasn't." Lucien's mouth quirked. "Fair point." He pulled into traffic with smooth confidence. "Clara, I need you to understand something. My father is going to test you, ask invasive questions, push boundaries, try to figure out what you're made of." "Why?" "Because that's what he does. And because he thinks anyone close to me is either using me or weak." Lucien glanced at her. "Prove him wrong." Clara's nerves crystallized into something sharper, more focused. "I can do that." "I know you can." They drove to Brooklyn, to a neighborhood that looked almost suburban with tree-lined streets and brownstones that had probably been there 100 years. Lucien pulled up to a house that looked modest from the outside, but Clara could see the security cameras, the reinforced door, the subtle signs of protection. Inside it was warm and smelled like cooking, garlic and tomatoes and bread. A woman in her 60s appeared, her face lighting up when she saw Lucien. "Lucien, finally you come see your Zia." He hugged her, and Clara saw his whole body relax in a way it never did anywhere else. "Zia Maria, this is Clara Bennett." Maria turned her sharp eyes on Clara, assessing in one quick sweep. Then she smiled. "Benvenuta. Come, your father is in the garden." They followed her through the house, through a kitchen that was clearly the heart of everything, out to a back garden where an old man sat at a wrought iron table. Antonio Moretti looked nothing like his son. He was shorter, rounder, with white hair and weathered hands and eyes that were still sharp despite the sickness Clara could see in the gray tinge of his skin. "Papa," Lucien said, "this is Clara Bennett." Antonio stood with effort, studied Clara with an intensity that made her want to squirm. Then he smiled. "So, you're the one who has my son forgetting to sleep." Clara blinked. What?" "He called me at midnight last night, talking about campaigns and strategy and some woman who made him remember why he cares about this work." Antonio's smile widened. "That was you, no?" "I suppose so." "Sit, eat, we talk." Dinner was loud and warm and full of more relatives than Clara could track. Cousins and aunts and uncles who all seemed to know Lucien, who all treated Clara like she belonged there even though she was a stranger. Antonio asked her questions about her work, her family, her brother, her plans. Not invasive exactly, but thorough, testing her like Lucien had warned. And Clara found herself answering honestly, telling stories about Danny's recovery, about her parents who'd moved to Florida after retirement, about building a career from nothing. "You have steel," Antonio said finally, nodding with approval. "Good. My son needs someone with steel." Lucien looked uncomfortable. "Papa, what?" "I'm old, I'm dying, I can say what I want." Antonio turned to Clara. "He tell you about the business?" "Some of it." "And you're still here?" It wasn't a question. "That's smart or stupid? I haven't decided which." "Both," Clara said before she could stop herself. "Definitely both." Antonio laughed, a sound that turned into coughing. Lucien was on his feet immediately, but his father waved him off. "I'm fine. Sit down." He caught his breath, took a sip of wine. "Clara, you understand what you're getting into with my son?" "Honestly, no, but I'm trying." "Good, keep trying." Antonio's expression turned serious. "Lucien, he's not like the rest of us. He wanted something different, something clean, and he built it. But that doesn't mean the past doesn't follow him." "I understand. Do you?" Antonio leaned forward. "Because the men I used to work with, some of them, they don't like that Lucien walked away. They see it as disrespect. And if they think you're important to him, that's enough," Lucien interrupted, his voice hard. "Clara doesn't need to hear this." "Yes, she does." Antonio didn't back down. "If she's going to be in your life, she needs to know what that means." "I can handle myself," Clara said quietly, and both men turned to look at her. "I appreciate the warning, But I'm not scared of your past, Mr. Moretti. I'm more interested in what Lucien's building for the future. Antonio studied her for a long moment, then smiled. Steal, he said again. I like her, Lucien. Don't screw this up. Lucien's expression was unreadable, but his hand found Clara's under the table, squeezed once, then let go. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of food and stories and laughter. By the time they left, Clara's head was spinning, and her heart felt strangely full. In the car, Lucien was quiet. You okay? Clara asked. That went better than I expected. What were you expecting? For you to run. He glanced at her. Or for my father to scare you off. I don't scare easily. I'm starting to understand that. Lucien pulled up to her building, put the car in park, but didn't move to get out. Clara, what he said about the past, I heard him. I understand. She turned to face him. Lucien, I'm not going anywhere. Not because of your family, not because of whatever complicated history comes with knowing you. I'm here because I want to be. Something in his expression cracked open. Why? Because you asked me who made me cry. Because you changed my locks without being asked. Because you look at me like I'm something rare instead of something broken. Clara's voice softened. Because for the first time in years, I feel like myself again. Lucien reached out, his hand cupping her face with a gentleness that contrasted everything else about him. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and Clara's breath caught. I'm going to kiss you, he said quietly. And if you don't want that, tell me now. Clara's heart was hammering. Okay. Okay, you don't want me to, or okay, you do? Okay, I do. Lucien's smile was brief and devastating. Then he leaned in and kissed her, and Clara's entire world narrowed to the feeling of his mouth on hers, his hand tangled in her hair, the way he kissed like he did everything else, with complete focus and absolute certainty. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucien rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea, he said. Probably. You're my client. This is completely unprofessional. Definitely unprofessional. And I'm going to do it anyway. Clara laughed, the sound breathless and happy. Good. Lucien kissed her again, softer this time, then pulled back. Go inside before I forget every rule I've ever made about keeping business and personal separate. Clara climbed out of the car, her legs unsteady, and turned back to look at him through the window. Same time tomorrow? She asked. Earlier. I'll have Vincent pick you up at 8. That's excessive. Get used to it. Clara was still smiling when she reached her apartment, when she fell into bed still wearing her clothes, when she finally drifted off, thinking about dark eyes and dangerous kisses, and a future she hadn't planned but suddenly couldn't wait to build. Clara woke up to 17 missed calls from a number she didn't recognize and a text from Lucien that just said, "Don't answer any unknown numbers today." She stared at her phone, her brain still foggy from sleep, trying to understand what was happening. It was 6 in the morning, too early for crisis, too early for anything except maybe the kind of trouble that didn't respect business hours. Another text came through. Vincent is outside, get dressed, we need to talk. Clara's pulse kicked up. She threw on jeans and a sweater, didn't bother with makeup, and was downstairs in 8 minutes flat. Vincent opened the car door without a word, his expression as unreadable as always, and Clara climbed in to find Lucien already waiting. He looked like he hadn't slept. His jaw was tight, his hair slightly messed like he'd been running his hands through it, and there was a darkness in his eyes that made Clara's stomach clench. What's wrong? She asked immediately. Lucien handed her his phone. On the screen was a photo, grainy, clearly taken from a distance, of the two of them outside her building last night, kissing. Clara's blood went cold. Where did this come from? An anonymous account that popped up this morning, posted to 3 different gossip sites with a caption about me having a new mystery woman. Lucien's voice was controlled, but she could hear the anger underneath. Within an hour, your name was identified. Someone leaked it to the press. Clara looked at the photo again, at the way Lucien's hand was tangled in her hair, at the intimacy of the moment that had been private and was now decidedly not. Who would do this? I have theories. Lucien took the phone back, his jaw working. Clara, I'm sorry. I should have been more careful. Should have thought about the exposure. Stop. Clara cut him off. We kissed outside my building. That's not a crime, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Something in Lucien's expression softened slightly. You're about to be all over the internet as my girlfriend. People are going to dig into your life, your history, everything. That's not what you signed up for. Clara thought about it, about her privacy being shredded, about becoming tabloid fodder, about Marcus probably seeing the photo and losing his mind. Then she thought about the way Lucien had kissed her, the way his father had welcomed her into his home, the way the past week had cracked her life open in ways that hurt and healed in equal measure. I can handle it, she said. Clara, I said I can handle it. She met his eyes. But I need you to tell me the truth. Is this just gossip, or is this something more dangerous? Lucien was quiet for a long moment. My ex-wife's lawyer called this morning. Apparently she's very interested in renegotiating our settlement now that I'm publicly involved with someone new. Clara blinked. You're married? Divorced. 3 years ago. It was... He stopped, seemed to recalibrate. It was a mistake from the beginning. We were together for 18 months, married for 6. She wanted access to my money and connections. I wanted someone who understood the world I lived in. His voice was flat, emotionless. Neither of us got what we wanted. And now she wants more money because we kissed? She wants more money because she's always wanted more money. This just gave her an excuse. Lucien leaned back against the seat, exhaustion clear on his face. Her name is Isabelle Duchamp. You'll probably see her mentioned in some of the articles. She's very good at playing the victim. Clara processed this, adding it to the growing pile of complications that came with Lucien Moretti. What else should I know? About Isabelle? About everything. Your past, your enemies, whoever might have taken that photo. Clara kept her voice steady. If I'm in this, I need to know what I'm in. Lucien studied her face, and she could see him making some kind of decision. Okay, but not here. Come back to my apartment. I'll tell you everything. The drive to Lucien's place took 20 minutes, and Clara spent it watching the city wake up while her mind raced. She'd known getting involved with him would be complicated, but she hadn't expected it to happen this fast, this publicly. Lucien's apartment was in a building overlooking Central Park, the kind of address that came with doormen who wore actual uniforms and elevators that required keys. The space itself was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture that looked expensive but uncomfortable, art on the walls that Clara recognized from museum visits. It looked like a showroom, like nobody actually lived there. Coffee? Lucien asked, heading toward a kitchen that was all granite and stainless steel. Please. Clara wandered to the windows while he made it, looking out at the park below. From up here, the city looked manageable, contained. She knew it was an illusion. Lucien came back with 2 mugs, handed her one. Sit. This is going to take a while. They settled on a couch that was exactly as uncomfortable as it looked, and Lucien started talking. He told her about building his first company with money borrowed from people his father knew, people who expected favors in return. About making deals that weren't quite illegal, but weren't quite clean either. About the moment he realized he'd become the kind of man he'd sworn he'd never be, and the brutal process of extracting himself from those relationships. It took me 3 years to pay everyone back, to sever every tie, he said, staring into his coffee. And even then, some of them didn't want to let go. They saw me as an asset, a way into legitimate business. My father's son with a clean record and expensive connections. What did you do? Made it clear that I was done, that anyone who tried to pull me back in would regret it. His voice was cold. I'm not proud of the methods I used, but they worked. Clara thought about Vincent, about the way people moved around Lucien with a mixture of respect and fear. And Isabelle? I met her during that transition. She was working PR for one of my competitors, seemed to understand the world I was trying to build. Smart, ambitious, beautiful in that calculated way. He laughed bitterly. I thought she got me. Turned out she just got $signs. What happened? She thought marrying me meant unlimited access to my accounts. Wanted to redecorate this apartment for $2 million, host parties for her friends on my dime, quit her job and shop full-time. Lucien set down his mug. When I said no, when I made her sign a postnup limiting her access, she started sleeping with my business partner, very publicly. Made sure I'd find out. Clara winced. That's strategic. She wanted me to divorce her so she could play the abandoned wife. Get sympathy, a better settlement, maybe even damage my reputation enough to hurt my business. His jaw tightened. I gave her the divorce, paid her enough to go away quietly, Thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. She comes back every year or so with a new lawyer and a new demand, usually around the time I'm closing a major deal or launching something public. Lucian looked at Clara. The Apex Foundation campaign is going to be huge. She knows that. This photo just gave her an opening. Clara absorbed this, trying to fit it into what she knew about him. Does she know about your father? About the family history? She knows some of it. Threatened to leak it to the press during the divorce. Lucian's expression went hard. I had Gregory explain exactly what would happen if she did. She backed down. Clara didn't ask what Gregory had said. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. So what now? She asked instead. Now we ignore it. Let Gregory handle Isabel's lawyer. Keep working. Lucian turned to face her fully. Clara, I meant what I said last night. I want this, want you, but not if it's going to destroy your life. If you want to walk away, I'll understand. Clara looked at him, at the exhaustion in his face and the careful distance he was maintaining, like he expected her to bolt. She thought about Marcus, about 3 years of walking on eggshells and making herself smaller, about apologizing for her success and her ambition and her refusal to be anything less than exactly who she was. Lucien had never asked her to be smaller, had never treated her competence like a threat, had in fact seemed to value her more because of it. I'm not walking away, she said. You should. Probably, but I'm not. Clara moved closer, watched his eyes track the movement. Lucien, I spent 3 years with someone who made me feel like I was too much, too driven, too focused, too ambitious. And the whole time I thought the problem was me. She reached out, took his hand. You make me feel like I'm exactly enough, exactly right. I'm not giving that up because your ex-wife is a nightmare or because someone took our picture. Lucien's fingers tightened around hers. This is going to get messy. I know. The press is going to tear apart your life looking for anything scandalous. Let them look. They won't find anything. Clara smiled slightly. I'm actually pretty boring. Work, family, the occasional charity gala, not exactly tabloid gold. They'll make something up if they can't find anything real. Then we'll deal with it. Clara shifted closer until their knees were touching. Together. Lucian pulled her in, kissed her hard enough to steal her breath, and Clara felt something settle in her chest. This was insane. This was happening too fast, but it also felt inevitable in a way nothing else ever had. When they broke apart, Lucian rested his forehead against hers. We should get to work. The campaign won't build itself. Romantic. I'm practical, but he was smiling when he said it, and Clara counted that as a win. They spent the next 6 hours at Lucian's dining table, which turned out to be an enormous slab of reclaimed wood that was actually comfortable to work at, building out the campaign structure. Rachel Okonkwo joined them via video call from Los Angeles, enthusiastic about the documentary angle and full of ideas about how to structure the narrative. I want to follow the patients through their treatment, Rachel said, her face filling Lucian's laptop screen. Not just before and after, but the actual journey, the struggles, the setbacks, the moments of hope. Make it real. How long would that take? Clara asked. 6 months minimum, maybe longer depending on the cases. Rachel leaned forward. But Lucien, if you're serious about Sundance, we'd need to start filming immediately to have anything ready by January. Start filming, Lucien said without hesitation. I'll have Gregory send over the contracts tomorrow. Clara will be your main point of contact for patient coordination and clinic access. Rachel's smile was brilliant. This is going to be amazing. I can feel it. After she hung up, Clara looked at Lucien. You just committed to a 6-month documentary shoot without even discussing budget. The budget doesn't matter. The impact does. Spoken like someone who's never had to worry about money. Lucien's expression turned serious. I worried about money every day until I was 28. Worried about making rent, about eating, about whether I'd lose everything I'd built. He met her eyes. Now I have it, and I'm going to use it for things that actually matter. This matters. Clara felt something warm expand in her chest. You're kind of incredible, you know that? I'm really not. But his mouth quirked. I'm just a man with resources and opinions about how they should be used. And control issues. Extensive control issues, he agreed. Are you going to pretend that surprises you? Not even a little bit. They ordered lunch from somewhere that delivered food in actual containers instead of takeout boxes,
And Clara was beginning to understand that this was how Lucian lived. Everything curated, nothing left to chance. "Don't you ever just order pizza and eat it on the couch?" she asked, looking at the carefully plated salmon. "No, why would I?" "Because it's normal? Because sometimes you don't want to eat off china?" Lucian considered this like it was a genuine puzzle. "I've never thought about it." Clara laughed. "Okay, new rule. Once a week, we're ordering something completely normal and eating it like regular people. Define regular people. People who don't have personal chefs and imported wine with every meal. I don't have a personal chef. You have a phone number you call that results in restaurant-quality food appearing at your door within 30 minutes. That's basically the same thing." Lucian smiled, and it was the real one that made him look younger. "Fine. Once a week, but I'm choosing the pizza place." "Deal." Clara's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it reflexively. "Michelle? Girl, you're all over page 6. Billionaire Lucien Moretti's mystery woman identified. When were you going to tell me you were dating him?" Clara sighed and showed Lucien the text. "You should probably tell your friends," he said, "before they find out from the internet." "I should probably tell my family, too." Clara thought about her parents seeing those photos, about Danny calling with 1,000 questions. "This is going to be a fun conversation. Want me there when you do it? You want to be on the phone when I tell my mother I'm dating a billionaire I met less than a week ago? I've handled hostile negotiations with foreign governments. How bad could your mother be?" Clara laughed so hard she nearly choked on her water. "You have no idea what you're offering." But he was serious, she realized. Actually offering to face her family with her, to stand beside her through the awkward explanations and inevitable judgment. Marcus had never even met her parents, had always found excuses to avoid family gatherings, had made it clear that her family was her problem, not his. "Thank you," Clara said quietly, "but I should probably do this one alone, at least at first." "Okay, but the offer stands." They went back to work, and Clara tried not to think about the fact that somewhere online, people were probably picking apart her life, her clothes, her face, looking for reasons she wasn't good enough for Lucien Moretti. At 5 o'clock, Gregory Chen appeared with a stack of papers that required Lucian's signature. He nodded at Clara with professional courtesy, but didn't comment on her presence, which she appreciated. "Isabel's lawyer sent over their demands," Gregory said, setting down a folder. "It's ambitious." "How ambitious?" "She wants an additional $15 million and a percentage of the Apex Foundation proceeds." Lucian's laugh was cold. "She wants a percentage of a nonprofit foundation. Is she actually that stupid, or is her lawyer just terrible?" "Both, probably." Gregory flipped open the folder. "I've drafted a response that basically amounts to go to hell, but in more legal language. Want me to send it?" "Yes." "And Gregory, make it clear this is the last time we're entertaining this. Next demand, we countersue for harassment. Already included." Gregory gathered his papers. "Clara, good to see you again. Try to keep him from making any more impulsive business decisions while I'm gone." "That feels impossible," Clara said. Gregory smiled. "You're probably right." After he left, Lucian leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "I'm sorry you have to watch me deal with this." "Why? It's your life. This is part of it." Clara moved behind him, started massaging his shoulders without really thinking about it. "Besides, I'm impressed by how efficiently you shut her down. I've had practice." Lucian's head dropped forward as Clara worked at the tension in his neck. 3 years of practice. "Does she know about us? I mean, actually know, not just the photo?" "She will soon. Gregory will make sure of it. Better she hears it officially than from gossip sites." He was quiet for a moment. "Clara, she's going to come after you. Try to find dirt, make your life difficult. It's what she does." "Let her try." Clara's voice was steadier than she felt. "I'm not scared of her." Lucien reached up, caught her hand, pulled her around until she was standing in front of him. His eyes were dark, intense. "You should be. She's vicious when she wants something. So am I." Clara leaned down, kissed him softly. "And unlike her, I actually care about you. Not your money, not your connections. You." Something in Lucian's expression cracked open, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "How are you real?" "I'm not sure I am. This whole week feels like a fever dream." "Good fever dream or bad?" Clara pretended to think about it. Undecided. Ask me again when I'm not all over the internet. Lucien pulled her down onto his lap, and Clara went willingly, settling against him like they'd done this 1,000 times instead of just twice. His arms came around her, solid and certain, and she let herself lean into it. I need to tell you something, Lucien said against her hair. Clara's stomach tightened. Okay, this thing with us, it's not casual for me. I don't do casual, never have. His voice was low, serious. So if you're looking for something temporary, something easy, you should tell me now. Clara pulled back to look at him. Do I seem like someone who does anything casually? No, but I needed to make sure we're on the same page. We're on the same page. Clara traced the line of his jaw. Lucien, I don't know where this is going. I don't know if it's going to work or implode spectacularly, but I know I want to find out. Even with all the complications? Especially with all the complications. She smiled. I'm apparently attracted to difficult men with control issues and complicated pasts. Lucky me. Very lucky you. Lucien kissed her again, slower this time, thorough in a way that made Clara's brain short-circuit. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he said, Stay tonight. It wasn't a question, but Clara heard the uncertainty underneath. Okay? I'll have Vincent pick up anything you need from your apartment. I can go get it myself. Clara, Lucien's voice was firm. Until we know who took that photo and why, I want you somewhere safe. Here, where I have security. Please. The please did it. Clara nodded. Okay. Vincent was dispatched with her keys and a list of items, and Clara tried not to feel weird about Lucien's bodyguard going through her apartment. At least it was clean. They ordered dinner, Chinese food, which Lucien insisted was normal enough, even though it came from a place that probably had a Michelin star, and ate sitting on the floor of his living room because Clara refused to use the formal dining table for takeout. This is strange, Lucien said, looking at his position on the hardwood like he'd never seen floor before. This is normal. Get used to it. I'm beginning to think your definition of normal and mine are very different. That's because you've forgotten what normal looks like. Clara pointed her chopsticks at him. When's the last time you did something just for fun? Not for business, not for networking. Just because you wanted to. Lucien thought about it, kept thinking. I don't know. That's sad. That's efficient. That's lonely. Clara said it gently, but she watched him flinch anyway. Lucien, you can have success and a life. They're not mutually exclusive. They have been for me. Then we're changing that. Clara stood, pulled him up with her. Come on. Where are we going? You'll see. She led him to the windows, to the view of Central Park lit up below, and pulled out her phone. Found a playlist of music she'd made years ago, stuff that was just for her, for when the world felt too heavy. What are you doing? Lucien asked. Teaching you how to be normal. Clara held out her hand. Dance with me. Clara, no business talk, no strategy, just 3 minutes of being two people who like each other. She smiled. Please? Lucien took her hand, pulled her close, and they swayed to music that was too loud and too pop for his elegant apartment. He was stiff at first, uncomfortable, but Clara kept moving, and eventually she felt him relax, felt his arms tighten around her waist. This is ridiculous, he said. This is nice. I don't dance. You're dancing right now. Lucien laughed, and the sound was so genuine it made Clara's chest ache. I suppose I am. They danced through 3 songs, then 4, until the playlist shifted to something slower, and Lucien pulled her closer, his cheek against her hair. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For reminding me what this feels like. Being with someone who wants me to be happy instead of useful. Clara's throat tightened. Lucien, I mean it. I've spent so long being what everyone needed. My father's son, my investor's success story, Isabel's bank account. I forgot what it felt like to just be myself. He pulled back to look at her. You make me want to be myself. The version who dances in his living room and eats takeout on the floor. That version of you is better, Clara said. More real. More real, he repeated, like he was testing the words. I like that. They stayed like that, swaying gently, until Clara's phone buzzed with a text from Vincent. Items retrieved.
waiting downstairs. Lucien went down to meet him while Clara explored his apartment. The bedroom was as impersonal as the rest, expensive furniture, neutral colors, nothing that suggested anyone actually slept there. But the bathroom was enormous, with a shower that had 6 different heads and a tub that could fit 4 people. Vincent had packed her an overnight bag with surprising competence: pajamas, toiletries, tomorrow's clothes all neatly folded. Clara changed and washed her face, and when she came out, Lucien was sitting on the bed looking at his phone with an expression that made her nervous. "What's wrong?" He held up the phone. Another photo, this one of them at his father's house. Going inside together, Lucien's hand on her back. "Someone's following us," Clara said, her blood going cold. "Or someone's paying attention." Lucien's jaw was tight. "I'm having Vincent run the accounts that posted these. Find out who's behind them." "You think it's Isabel?" "I think it's someone who wants something from me, and they're using you to get leverage." He set down the phone, pulled Clara onto the bed beside him. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you. I can take care of myself. I know you can. But you shouldn't have to." Lucien's hand found hers, threaded their fingers together. "Clara, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If this gets dangerous, if whoever's doing this escalates, you'll let me handle it. You'll trust me to keep you safe." Clara wanted to argue, to insist on her independence. But she looked at the tension in his shoulders, the genuine fear in his eyes, and realized this mattered to him in a way that went deeper than control. "I promise," she said, "but you have to promise me something too." "What?" "Promise you'll tell me the truth. All of it, no matter how bad it is." Clara squeezed his hand. "I can handle danger. I can't handle being lied to." Lucien was quiet for a long moment. "I promise." "Okay then." Clara kissed him, soft and quick. "Now, can we please go to sleep? I'm exhausted." They settled into bed, and it should have been awkward. First time sleeping next to each other, still learning each other's rhythms. But instead it felt easy, natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. Lucien pulled her against his chest, his arms secure around her waist, and Clara felt safer than she had in days. "Good night, Clara," he murmured against her hair. "Good night." She drifted off listening to his heartbeat, steady and strong, and didn't dream about photos or ex-wives or danger. She dreamed about building something that mattered, with a man who saw her exactly as she was and wanted her anyway. When Clara woke up, Lucien was already gone. There was a note on his pillow. "Had to handle something. Vincent will drive you to the office. Coffee's ready in the kitchen. L." Clara found the coffee, perfect temperature, exactly how she liked it, and felt that now familiar warmth spread through her chest. He'd paid attention, remembered. Vincent appeared as she was finishing breakfast, his expression as neutral as ever. "Ms. Bennett, Mr. Moretti asked me to take you to Jensen and Associates." "Is he okay? The note didn't say where he went." "He's handling a situation. He'll call you when it's resolved." That was all she was going to get, Clara realized. She gathered her things and followed Vincent down to the car, trying not to worry about what situation meant. At the office, David Jensen was waiting in her office with an expression somewhere between excited and terrified. "Clara, we need to talk." She set down her bag. "About? About the fact that you're dating Lucien Moretti, and it's all over the news, and our phones have been ringing off the hook with press requests." David ran his hand through his hair. "This is incredible exposure for the firm, but it's a lot. Are you okay?" Clara thought about the photos, about Isabel's lawyer, about someone following her and Lucien around the city. "I'm fine, it's just noise." "Clara, this isn't just noise. This is page 6, the Post. 3 different business journals. People are fascinated." David leaned forward. "Which means we need to be very careful. Any misstep reflects on the firm." Something cold settled in Clara's stomach. "Are you asking me to end things with him?" No, of course not. I'm just..." David stopped, regrouped. "I'm saying be smart, be careful, and maybe consider having the firm's PR team help you manage the attention." "I don't need a PR team to date someone." "You do when that someone is Lucien Moretti." David's voice softened. "Clara, I'm on your side, but you need to understand what you're walking into. This isn't going to go away." Clara knew he was right, knew this was just the beginning. "I understand. and I appreciate the concern, but I can handle this. Okay, David stood. Just know I'm here if you need anything. And Clara, congratulations. He seems like a good man.
After he left, Clara sat at her desk and tried to focus on work. Tried to ignore the texts from Michelle and the missed calls from her mother, and the email from a journalist asking for comment on her whirlwind romance with Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. Her phone rang. Lucienne. Hey, she answered. Where are you? Dealing with Isabel. His voice was tight. She showed up at my office this morning demanding to talk. Had to have security remove her. Clara's hand tightened on the phone. Is she okay? She's fine. Dramatic, but fine. Lucian sighed. Clara, she knows about you. About us. And she's threatening to go to the press with stories about our marriage unless I increase her settlement. What kind of stories? Lies, mostly. That I was abusive, controlling, that I isolated her from her family. His voice was bitter. None of it's true. But that won't stop her from saying it. Clara felt anger spike through her. Can Gregory stop her? He's trying. But if she goes to the tabloids, they'll print it regardless of truth. They always do. Lucian was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Stop apologizing. This isn't your fault. It's my ex-wife, my past. It's absolutely my fault. No, Clara said firmly. It's her choice to be vindictive. You don't get to take responsibility for her actions. She took a breath. Lucienne, let her talk. If she wants to lie to the press, let her. People who matter will know the truth. It could damage your reputation, your career. Let me worry about my career. Clara surprised herself with how steady her voice was. I'm not running because your ex is a nightmare. I'm not running at all. She heard Lucienne exhale, something releasing. You're sure? I'm sure. Okay. His voice shifted, became more controlled. I'm coming to get you. Lunch. Somewhere public. Why public? Because I want everyone to see that I'm not hiding you. That whatever Isabel says, whatever anyone says, I'm proud to be with you. He paused. If that's okay. Clara felt something warm bloom in her chest. That's more than okay. Good. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He was there in 15, walking into Jensen and Associates like he owned the building, and maybe he did for all Clara knew. Every head turned as he crossed the lobby, but Lucien's eyes found only her. Ready? He asked. Clara grabbed her coat. Ready? They walked out together, and Clara was acutely aware of the phones being pulled out, the photos being taken. This was deliberate, she realized. Lucian was making a statement. The restaurant he chose was French, expensive, and absolutely packed with Manhattan's business elite. People who would see them, talk about them, spread the word faster than any press release. They were seated at a table by the window, maximum visibility, and Clara understood this was strategic. This was Lucien using the same tactics he used in business, control the narrative before someone else did. You're making a show of this, Clara said once they were settled. I'm making a point. Lucian reached across the table, took her hand where everyone could see. That you're important to me. That I'm serious about this. Even though we've known each other a week? Especially because we've known each other a week and I already can't imagine my life without you in it. His eyes held hers. I know it's fast, I know it's insane, but I also know what I want, and I want you. Clara's breath caught. This was a declaration, public and permanent, and once it was made, there would be no taking it back. She thought about Marcus, about 3 years of half measures and hesitation, about never being quite enough. Then she thought about Lucien, about the way he dropped everything to change her locks, about dancing in his living room, about the fierce protectiveness in his eyes when he looked at her. I want you too, she said, and watched something in his expression settle. They ordered lunch, talked about the campaign, about Rachel's documentary plans, about anything except the fact that they were being photographed from 6 different angles. And when they left, Lucien kept his hand on her back, kept her close, made it absolutely clear to anyone watching that Clara Bennett was his. The photos hit the internet before they made it back to his car. Clara's phone exploded with notifications, friends, colleagues, strangers commenting on every aspect of her appearance, her expression, her worthiness. She turned off the notifications and leaned her head back against the seat.
You okay? Lucian asked. Ask me in a week. Fair. He pulled into traffic. Clara, I need to tell you something else. Her stomach tightened. What? My father wants to see you again. Tonight, if you're willing. Lucien's voice was careful. He's not doing well. The doctors say he has maybe a month. He wants to meet the woman who made me remember how to be human. Clara's throat went tight. Of course I'll come. You're sure? It's not going to be easy. He's sick, and he's mean when he's sick. And, Lucien. Clara reached over, took his hand. I want to be there. For you and for him. Something in Lucien's expression cracked, vulnerable and grateful. Thank you. They drove to Brooklyn in comfortable silence, and Clara tried to prepare herself for what was coming. She'd seen terminal illness before with Danny, knew how it stripped away pretense, left only the raw truth of who people really were. Antonio looked worse than he had 3 days ago. Thinner, grayer, like the illness was eating him from the inside. But his eyes were still sharp when they landed on Clara. You came back, he said, his voice rough. Smart girl. Most people run when they see how bad it gets. I'm not most people, Clara said, settling into the chair beside his bed. No, you're not. Antonio looked at Lucien. Leave us. I want to talk to your girl alone. Lucien hesitated. Papa, go. She can handle herself. After Lucien left, Antonio turned his full attention to Clara. He loves you. You know that, right? Clara's breath caught. We've only known each other a week. Time doesn't matter. Not with love. I knew I loved my Juliana the first day I saw her. Married her 3 months later. 52 years we had together before the cancer took her. His eyes were distant. 52 years, and it still wasn't enough. I'm sorry for your loss. Don't be sorry. Be smart. Antonio leaned forward with effort. My son, he's built walls so high nothing gets through. Protects himself from everyone. But you got through. And that scares him more than anything he's ever faced. Why are you telling me this? Because he's going to push you away. When things get hard, when the past comes back, he's going to tell himself you're better off without him. Antonio's gaze was intense. Don't let him. Fight for him. He needs someone who'll fight. Clara felt tears press behind her eyes. I will. Good. Antonio settled back, satisfied. Now tell me about this campaign you're building. Lucien says it's going to change everything. They talked until Antonio's energy faded, until his words started slurring with exhaustion. Lucien appeared in the doorway, and Clara stood to leave. Clara, Antonio called as she reached the door. Welcome to the family, such as it is. Clara's chest went tight with emotion. Thank you. In the car, Lucien was quiet. He likes you, he said finally. I like him too. He's never said that to anyone. Welcome to the family. Lucien's voice was rough. Not even to Isabel. Clara took his hand, held tight. I'm honored. He's dying. I know. And I don't know how to... Lucien stopped, his jaw working. I don't know how to do this. How to lose him. Clara shifted closer, wrapped her arms around him. You don't have to know. You just have to be there. And I'll be there with you. Lucien held her like she was the only solid thing in a world that was falling apart, and Clara held him back just as tight. Because this was what love looked like, she realized. Not the easy parts, not the romantic gestures, but this. Showing up when things hurt, staying when it would be easier to run. And she wasn't running, not now, not ever. The headlines hit the next morning like a bomb going off. Clara woke up to her phone vibrating so hard it fell off Lucien's nightstand, and when she grabbed it, Michelle's text filled the screen. Do not look at the internet. I repeat, do not look. Clara looked anyway. Moretti's new girlfriend, gold digger or true love, screamed one outlet. Another declared billionaire moves on from supermodel X with unknown PR girl. But the worst one, the one that made Clara's stomach drop, came from a gossip site known for destroying reputations. Sources close to Isabelle Duchamp's reveal Lucien Moretti's dark side. Ex-wife speaks out. Clara clicked through with shaking hands. The article was vicious. Isabelle had given an interview claiming Lucien was controlling, possessive, that he'd monitored her spending and isolated her from friends. that their divorce had been the hardest thing she'd ever survived, and seeing him with someone new brought back all the trauma. There were photos of Isabel looking tearful and vulnerable, contrasted with photos of Clara and Lucien at lunch yesterday. Clara laughing at something he'd said, Lucien's hand possessive on her back. The caption read, "Is Clara Bennett walking into the same nightmare Isabel escaped?" Clara felt sick. "Don't read it." Lucien's voice came from the doorway. He was already dressed, phone in hand, expression darker than she'd ever seen it. "Gregory's already drafting a response." "She's calling you abusive." Claire's voice came out thin. "She's making it sound like you hurt her." "I know what she's doing." Lucien crossed to the bed, took the phone from Clara's hands. "And it's not going to work. People believe this stuff. They're going to think, let them think whatever they want." Lucien's voice was hard. "Anyone who knows me knows it's a lie. Everyone else doesn't matter." But it did matter, Clara thought. It mattered because mud stuck even when it was thrown at the wrong person. It mattered because she could already see the comments piling up, people taking Isabel's side, calling Lucien a monster, and Clara an idiot for getting involved. Her phone rang. Her mother. Clara closed her eyes. "I have to take this." Lucien nodded and stepped out, giving her privacy she wasn't sure she wanted. "Hi, Mom." "Clara Elizabeth Bennett." Her mother's voice was tight with worry. "I just saw the news. Who is this man? Why didn't you tell us you were seeing someone?" "It's complicated, Mom." "Complicated how? The article says he was married before, that his ex-wife is saying terrible things. The ex-wife is lying." Clara's voice came out sharper than she intended. "Mom, I know this looks bad. I know it's fast, but Lucien he's good. He's been nothing but good to me." Her mother was quiet for a long moment. "Your father wants to meet him." Clara laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. "Of course he does. Clara, we're your parents. We love you. And after Marcus," her mother's voice softened, "we just want to make sure you're okay, that you're not rushing into something because you're hurt." "I'm not rushing. Or maybe I am, but it's the right kind of rushing." Clara rubbed her face. "Mom, can I call you back? I need to figure out what's happening." "Okay. But Clara, be careful. Men with that much money, that much power, they're not always what they seem." After she hung up, Clara sat on the edge of Lucien's bed and tried to breathe through the panic climbing her throat. This was a disaster. This was exactly the kind of public nightmare she'd never wanted. But then she thought about Antonio's words. "He's going to push you away. Don't let him." Clara found Lucien in his home office, on the phone with someone, his voice clipped and precise. "I don't care what it costs. I want a full investigation into who's been following us. Photos, phone records, everything." He paused. "And get me a meeting with the editor at that gossip site, today." He hung up when he saw Clara, and his expression immediately shifted to concern. "Your mother?" "Wants you to meet my father. Thinks I'm making a terrible mistake." Clara crossed her arms. "Are you going to sue them? The website?" "I'm going to make them retract the story and issue an apology." Lucien's voice was cold. "And then I'm going to make sure they think twice before printing lies about anyone ever again." "That sounds ominous." "That's the point." He moved toward her. "Clara, I told you this would get messy. This is just the beginning." "I know." "So what do you want to do?" Clara looked at him, at the tension in his jaw and the careful distance he was maintaining, like he was preparing for her to walk away, just like his father had predicted. "I want to fight back," she said. Lucien's eyebrows rose slightly. "What? Isabel wants to paint you as a monster? Fine. Let's show everyone who you actually are." Clara's mind was already racing. "The documentary Rachel's making, we move up the timeline. Start filming now. Show you at the clinics with patients, building something that actually matters. Make it impossible for people to believe you're the man Isabel's describing." Something flickered in Lucien's eyes. "That's strategic. It's what you do, right? Control the narrative?" Clara moved closer. "So let's control it, together." Lucien stared at her for a long moment, and then he smiled. Actually, smiled. "You're dangerous." "I'm effective. There's a difference." He pulled her in, kissed her hard. "Call Rachel. Tell her we're moving up production. I want cameras at the Brooklyn clinic by the end of the week." "What about Isabel?" Let Gregory handle Isabel. You and I have work to do. They spent the next 3 days in a controlled frenzy. Rachel flew in from Los Angeles with a small crew, and they descended on the Brooklyn clinic like a military operation. Clara coordinated with patients, secured releases, built shot lists that would tell the story they needed to tell. And Lucien was different on camera than Clara had expected. Not performative, not putting on a show, just genuinely present with every person he talked to. A 7-year-old girl with leukemia who wanted to be a doctor someday. A single mother who'd finally been able to get her son the asthma medication he needed. An elderly veteran whose cancer treatment had been covered by the Foundation's partnership program. Clara watched through the monitor as Lucien sat with them, listened to them, remembered their names and their stories. This was who he actually was, she realized. Not the cold businessman from that first meeting, but this. Someone who'd built an empire so he could use it to help people who'd been overlooked by everyone else. He's good at this, Rachel said, appearing beside Clara. Natural. Most wealthy donors are so uncomfortable around the people they're helping. But him, he actually cares. He does, Clara agreed. And you two. Rachel gestured at the monitor where Lucien had glanced toward Clara, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. That's real. The camera doesn't lie about chemistry like that. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. We're trying to keep the personal stuff out of the documentary. Good luck with that, Rachel smiled. Every time he talks about the Foundation's mission, he looks at you, like you're the reason he remembers why it matters. Before Clara could respond, her phone buzzed. Gregory Chen. Need you and Lucien at my office. Now. Isabel escalated. Clara's stomach dropped. She showed Lucien the text, and she watched his whole body go tense. We need to go, he said to Rachel. Can you handle things here? Of course. Go. In the car, Lucien was silent, his jaw tight. Vincent drove with the kind of focused intensity that suggested he knew exactly how bad this was. Gregory's office was in Midtown, all glass and chrome, and the kind of expensive minimalism that screamed power. He was waiting in the conference room with 2 other lawyers Clara didn't recognize and a stack of papers that looked ominous. Isabel filed a lawsuit this morning, Gregory said without preamble. She's suing for defamation based on statements you allegedly made to Clara about their marriage. Clara's blood went cold. What statements? According to her complaint, you told Clara that Isabel was manipulative, a gold digger, and only interested in his money, that you encouraged him to cut her off financially and limit her settlement. Gregory looked at Clara. Did you say any of that? Clara tried to remember exact conversations. Lucien told me about their marriage, that it didn't work out, that she wanted access to his money, but I didn't encourage anything. It doesn't matter, one of the other lawyers said. She's arguing that you've defamed her character and cost her reputation. She's asking for $20 million in damages. That's insane, Clara said. That's strategic, Gregory corrected. She knows we'll settle for less to make this go away, and she's counting on the publicity to pressure us. Lucien's fist hit the table hard enough to make everyone jump. No. Lucien, Gregory started. I said no. We're not settling. We're not paying her another cent, and we're definitely not letting her use Clara as leverage. His voice was deadly calm. File a countersuit. Harassment, extortion, malicious prosecution, whatever applies. I want her destroyed. That could get messy, the other lawyer warned. I don't care how messy it gets. Lucien looked at Gregory. Do it. Gregory nodded slowly. Okay, but Clara, you need to be prepared. This means depositions, potentially testimony. They're going to dig into your life, your relationship with Lucien, everything. Clara felt like she couldn't breathe. This was spiraling out of control so fast she couldn't track it. 2 weeks ago, she'd been planning a gala and trying to fix a dying relationship. Now she was being sued by a billionaire's ex-wife and caught in a legal battle she didn't understand. I need air, she said, standing abruptly. I'm sorry, I need a minute. She made it to the hallway before the tears came, hot and angry and overwhelming. This was too much. This was more than she'd signed up for, more than any sane person would tolerate. Footsteps behind her. Lucien. Don't, she said without turning around. Don't tell me it's going to be okay. I wasn't going to. He moved in front of her, and his expression was raw in a way she'd never seen. Clara, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you're in this because of me. I'm not in this because of you. I'm in this because your ex-wife is vindictive and cruel. It amounts to the same thing. Lucian's voice was rough. You should walk away, right now, before this gets worse. There it was. The push Antonio had warned her about. Clara wiped her eyes, straightened her spine. No. Clara, I said no. She stepped closer, made him look at her. You think I'm going to run because things got hard? Because your past showed up and made things complicated? This isn't complicated. This is dangerous. She's going to tear apart your life looking for ammunition. Let her look. She won't find anything. Clara's voice was steady now, certain. Lucien, I knew what I was getting into. Maybe not the specifics, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. And I chose it anyway. I chose you. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you choose this? Because you're worth it. Clara reached up, cupped his face. Because you changed my locks without being asked. Because you sat with a 7-year-old cancer patient today and made her laugh. Because you look at me like I'm exactly enough. Her voice softened. Because I love you. Lucian went completely still. What? I love you, Clara repeated, and the words felt true in a way nothing else had in years. I know it's been 2 weeks. I know that's insane. But I don't care. I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. Lucian pulled her in, kissed her desperately like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they broke apart, he was shaking. I love you too, he said against her hair. I've loved you since you walked into that conference room crying and still managed to look like you could take on the world. Clara laughed, the sound wet and happy. That's a terrible meet cute. That's our meet cute. Lucien pulled back to look at her. Clara, if we do this, if we fight back, it's going to get ugly. She's going to say things about both of us. Try to make us look like villains. Then we'll prove her wrong. Clara took his hand. Together. Together, he repeated, like he was testing the word. They went back into the conference room, and Clara felt different, steadier, like she'd crossed some invisible line and there was no going back. We're countersuing, Lucian told Gregory, whatever it takes. Gregory nodded, unsurprised. I'll have the papers filed by end of day. But Lucien, Clara, you both need to understand that this is going to be public, very public. Every detail of your relationship is going to be scrutinized. We understand, Clara said before Lucian could. What do we do next? The next week was a blur of legal meetings and strategy sessions. Isabel's lawsuit made headlines, and the internet exploded with opinions. Half the people thought Clara was a homewrecker who'd stolen a married man. The other half thought Isabel was a scorned woman going after her ex's new girlfriend out of jealousy. The truth, as always, was more complicated than either version. Clara's firm was getting calls from reporters wanting comments. Her social media was flooded with messages ranging from supportive to viciously cruel. Someone had dug up photos from her college days and posted them with captions about how she'd always been ambitious in a way that made ambition sound like a crime. And through it all, Marcus kept texting. The messages had started innocuous enough. Hey, saw the news, hope you're okay. But they'd escalated quickly to, you're making a huge mistake, and he's going to destroy you. And finally, 3 days ago, we need to talk. I have information you need to hear. Clara had blocked him after that one. But it gnawed at her, the suggestion that Marcus knew something, that there was some piece of information she was missing. She was at Lucian's apartment going over deposition prep, when her phone rang from another unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Clara Bennett? Yes? This is Detective Sarah Reeves with NYPD. I'm calling about Marcus Hayes. Clara's heart stopped. What about him? He filed a police report this morning. Claims you've been harassing him, that your boyfriend threatened him at a charity event. The detective's voice was professional, detached. I need you to come in for questioning. Clara felt the room tilt. That's not true. I haven't contacted him since we broke up, and Lucian never threatened him. He just asked him to leave. That's what we're trying to determine. Can you come in this afternoon? Clara agreed, hung up, and immediately felt like she was going to be sick. Lucien appeared in the doorway. What's wrong? Marcus filed a police report. He's saying I've been harassing him, that you threatened him. Clara's voice was shaking. He's trying to make us look dangerous. Lucien's expression went cold in a way that actually scared her. He filed a false police report. He's going to lie. Say you threatened him at the gala, that I've been calling him, and we have proof that none of that happened. Lucien was already pulling out his phone. Vincent has security footage from the gala, and your phone records will show you haven't contacted him. He paused. Clara, this is Isabel's doing. She's coordinating with him. You don't know that. Yes, I do. This is exactly the kind of thing she'd orchestrate. Get your ex to file complaints, make us look aggressive, use it in her lawsuit. Lucien's voice was deadly calm. But she made a mistake, because Marcus is an idiot, and he's going to give us everything we need to prove she's behind this. Clara wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that truth would win out. But she'd seen how these things worked. Mud stuck whether it was true or not. I need to call Gregory, she said. Already on it. Lucien was typing rapidly. He'll meet you at the precinct. You're not doing this alone. 2 hours later, Clara sat in an interrogation room that smelled like coffee and desperation, with Gregory beside her and Detective Reeves across the table. Walk me through your relationship with Marcus Hayes, the detective said. Clara did, laying out the timeline. 3 years together, living in her apartment, the cheating, the breakup, the fact that she'd blocked his number after he wouldn't stop calling. And the incident at the charity gala? Detective Reeves asked. He showed up drunk, started making a scene. Lucien, Mr. Moretti, asked him to leave. That's it. No threats, no violence. Just asked him to go. Mr. Hayes claims Mr. Moretti said he'd regret coming back, that he had him physically removed by security. He did have security escort him out because Marcus was drunk and causing a scene at a fundraiser for a children's hospital. Clara kept her voice level, but there were no threats. There were 200 witnesses who can confirm that. Detective Reeves made notes, her expression unreadable. And you haven't contacted Mr. Hayes since the breakup? No. I blocked his number. I have the phone records to prove it. He claims you've been calling from different numbers, showing up at his workplace. Clara felt something snap. That's a lie. I haven't been within a mile of him since I left my apartment, and I've been working 16-hour days on a major campaign. When exactly would I have time to stalk my ex? Gregory touched her arm, a gentle warning. My client has provided a complete timeline of her activities. We have phone records, security footage, witness statements, all of which contradict Mr. Hayes' claims. Detective Reeves leaned back. Miss Bennett, I'm going to be honest with you. This looks like a coordinated attack. The timing of his report, combined with the lawsuit from Mr. Moretti's ex-wife, someone's trying to paint you both in a very specific light. Isabelle Duchamp, Claire said. She's behind this. We can't prove that, yet. The detective closed her notebook. But I'd advise you to be very careful. Document everything. Keep records of everywhere you go, everyone you talk to, because whoever's orchestrating this is going to keep pushing until something breaks. Clara left the precinct feeling hollowed out. Gregory walked her to where Vincent was waiting, and even the bodyguard's stoic presence didn't make her feel safer. This is insane, she said. How is this my life? This is what happens when someone with resources decides to destroy you, Gregory said quietly. But Clara, you're not alone in this. And Lucien, he's not going to let anything happen to you. Back at Lucien's apartment, she found him on the phone with someone, his voice sharp. I don't care if it's legal. I care if it's effective. He paused. Do it, and make sure everyone knows where it came from. He hung up when he saw Clara, and his expression immediately shifted to concern. How did it go? The detective thinks someone's coordinating attacks against us. She basically said to watch our backs. Clara sank onto the couch. Lucien, what are we doing? How do we fight this? We fight it by not backing down, by showing them that we're stronger together than they are separately. He sat beside her, pulled her close, and by making them regret ever coming after us. There was something dark in his voice, something that reminded Clara that Lucien Moretti hadn't built an empire by playing nice. What are you planning? She asked. I'm planning to make Isabel's life very difficult, and Marcus's too if he wants to keep playing games. Lucien's jaw was tight. I have investigators looking into who's been following us, who leaked those photos, and I'm having someone audit Isabel's finances, looking for anything that might explain her sudden need for more money. That sounds ruthless. It is.
Lucian met her eyes. Clara, I told you I'm not the man I used to be, but I still have access to those methods when I need them. And right now, I need them. Clara should be disturbed, should be questioning whether this was the man she'd fallen in love with. But instead, she just felt relieved that someone was finally fighting back with the same intensity Isabel was bringing. Okay, she said. What can I do? Lucian smiled, and it was all edges. Keep being you. Keep working on the campaign. Keep showing up. Keep proving that you're not going anywhere. That's what terrifies them, that we're not playing their game.
The campaign launch happened 3 weeks later, and it was everything Clara had envisioned and more. Rachel's documentary preview played to a packed theater of donors, press, and healthcare advocates. The footage of Lucien with patients, of Clara coordinating with clinic staff, of the real impact the foundation was having, it was devastating in the best way. People cried, people applauded, and when the lights came up, Clara saw Isabel in the back row, her expression murderous. Lucien saw her too. Vincent, make sure she leaves quietly. But Isabel was already moving, pushing through the crowd toward them. You think this changes anything? She hissed when she reached them. You think one feel-good video makes you look like a hero? I think it shows people who I actually am, Lucien said calmly, which is the opposite of what you've been claiming. People see what they want to see, and I'm going to make sure they see the truth, that you're a controlling bastard who ruins everyone he touches. Is that why you coordinated with Marcus Hayes? Clara asked, surprising herself. Why you had him file a false police report? Isabel's eyes flashed. I don't know what you're talking about. We have phone records, Lucien said softly. 17 calls between you and Marcus in the past 2 weeks, along with financial transfers from one of your shell accounts to his bank. Want to explain that to your lawyer? Isabel went pale. You're bluffing. I never bluff. Lucien's voice was cold. Gregory has everything. And unless you want to add fraud and conspiracy to your legal troubles, I suggest you drop the lawsuit and disappear. You can't threaten me. That's not a threat. That's a promise. Lucien stepped closer and Clara saw Vincent move into position behind Isabel. You're done, Isabel. Walk away now while you still can. For a moment, Clara thought Isabel was going to fight. But then something in her expression crumbled, and she turned and fled, pushing through the crowd with Vincent following at a careful distance. Clara exhaled, her whole body shaking. Is it over? Not yet, but soon. Lucien pulled her close, pressed his lips to her temple. You did amazing tonight. The campaign, the launch, it was perfect. We did amazing, Clara corrected. This was both of us. Around them, people were mingling, networking, writing checks for amounts that made Clara's head spin. The foundation was going to be fully funded within a month. The documentary was getting picked up by a major streaming service. Everything they'd worked for was coming together. And standing beside Lucien, Clara felt something settle in her chest. This was real. This was worth fighting for. Later that night, back at his apartment, Lucien's phone rang. He glanced at it, and his expression went carefully neutral. It's the hospital, he said. My father. Clara's stomach dropped. Go, I'll come with you. They made it to Brooklyn in record time, Vincent driving like every second mattered. Antonio was in his bedroom, surrounded by family, looking smaller than Clara had ever seen him. But when Lucien entered, his eyes found his son immediately. Lucien. His voice was barely a whisper. Come here. Lucien knelt beside the bed, and Clara saw his hand shake as he took his father's. I'm here, Papa. Good boy. Antonio's breathing was labored. You brought your girl? I'm here, Mr. Moretti, Clara said, moving to stand beside Lucien. Good. Good. Antonio looked between them. You take care of each other. Promise me. We promise, Lucien said, his voice breaking. And Lucien, Antonio's grip tightened. You build something good, something that matters, something your mother would be proud of. I am, Papa, the foundation, not the foundation. Antonio's eyes were intense despite his weakness. Love. You build love. That's what matters. Lucien nodded, unable to speak. Antonio's eyes closed, his breathing evening out. And surrounded by family, by the son who'd tried so hard to be different, Antonio Moretti let go. Clara held Lucien as he broke, as the grief he'd been holding back for months finally crashed through. And she understood that this was what love looked like, Not just the joyful parts, but this too. The pain and the loss and the showing up anyway. The funeral was 3 days later, and half of Brooklyn turned out. People whose names Clara recognized from news stories about organized crime stood beside legitimate businessmen and healthcare workers and patients from the Foundation's clinics. Antonio Moretti had lived in multiple worlds, and they all came to say goodbye. Lucien gave the eulogy, his voice steady despite the tears streaming down his face. He talked about a man who'd come from nothing and built something, who'd made mistakes but also made amends, who'd loved fiercely and protected his family with everything he had. And when it was over, when they laid Antonio to rest beside his wife, Lucien turned to Clara with eyes that looked lost. "I don't know what to do now," he admitted. "Now we keep building," Clara said, taking his hand. Just like he asked. Grief, Clara learned, didn't follow a schedule. Some days Lucien was functional, throwing himself into work with an intensity that bordered on manic. Other days he'd sit in his office staring at nothing, unreachable in a way that made her chest ache. The week after the funeral, Marcus escalated. Clara was leaving Jensen and Associates when he appeared, leaning against her car like he had every right to be there. She stopped 10 feet away, her hand already reaching for her phone. "Don't," Marcus said, holding up his hands. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." Clara kept her distance, acutely aware that the parking garage was mostly empty. And you filing a false police report made that very clear. "That wasn't my idea." Marcus ran his hand through his hair, and he looked rough. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, the kind of desperation that made people dangerous. "Isabel paid me to do it, said it would help her case, that you and Moretti deserved it for humiliating her." Clara's blood went cold. "You're admitting to filing a false report. I'm trying to warn you." Marcus stepped closer, and Clara backed up. "Clara, she's not done. The lawsuit, the reports, that was just the beginning. She's planning something bigger." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm not a complete asshole, despite what you think." Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "And because I never wanted you to get hurt. I was stupid. I cheated. I took advantage. But I never wanted this." Clara studied him, trying to determine if this was another manipulation or genuine remorse. "What's she planning?" "I don't know specifics. But she mentioned your brother, Danny. Said something about how people in healthcare were vulnerable to investigations, that maybe his school would be interested in some concerns about his background." Clara felt rage spike through her, so hot it made her dizzy. "She's going after Danny. She's going after anyone connected to you. Your family, your job, your reputation." Marcus looked genuinely scared. "Clara, this woman is unstable, and she has resources. You need to be careful." "Does Lucien know about this?" "I don't know. I'm telling you because—" Marcus stopped, seemed to struggle with the words. "Because, despite everything, I did care about you, and I don't want to see you destroyed." Clara wanted to scream at him, to rage about the irony of him warning her about destruction when he detonated her life just weeks ago. But there wasn't time for that. "Thank you for the warning," she said tightly. "Now leave before I call security." Marcus nodded and walked away, and Clara immediately called Lucien. He answered on the first ring. "Clara, Marcus just cornered me in the parking garage. He says Isabel's planning something bigger, that she's threatening to go after Danny." Clara's voice was shaking. "Lucien, if she touches my brother—" "She won't." Lucien's voice was steel. "Where are you?" "Still at the office. Vincent's picking me up in 10 minutes. "Good. Go straight to my apartment. Don't stop anywhere. Don't talk to anyone." She heard him moving, heard the urgency in his voice. "I'm calling Gregory. We're ending this tonight." Clara made it to Lucien's apartment to find him in his office with Gregory, Vincent, and 2 men she didn't recognize. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. "Clara, good," Gregory said when she entered. "We need you to confirm something." He pulled up a recording on his laptop, phone audio, scratchy but clear. Isabel's voice. "I don't care what it takes. Dig into the brother's background. Find anything we can use. Past relationships, money problems, anything that might make the school question his judgment." Then Marcus's voice. "That seems extreme. He's just a teacher. He's leverage. She loves him, which means he's useful." Isabel sounded bored, like she was discussing the weather. "And if we can't find anything real, we'll create something. A few anonymous complaints about inappropriate behavior with students should do it." Clara felt sick. When was this recorded? 2 days ago, one of the unfamiliar men said. He was older with the bearing of ex-military. We've been monitoring her communications since she escalated. This was the call that convinced us to move. Move how? Clara asked. Lucien turned to face her, and his expression was unlike anything she'd seen before. Controlled fury, barely contained. We're going to the FBI. Clara blinked. What? Isabel's been funding her lifestyle through fraud. Shell companies, fake investments, embezzlement from her father's estate. Gregory pulled up documents. She's been stealing for years, and we have proof. Enough to put her away for a decade. You've been investigating her. It wasn't a question. Since the lawsuit started, Lucien confirmed, I told you I'd make her regret coming after us. This is how. Clara looked at the evidence spread across the table. Bank records, corporate filings, email chains that showed a pattern of systematic theft. This could destroy her. That's the idea, Gregory said. Something in Clara's chest twisted. She thought about Isabel, about the woman who'd been hurt by a failed marriage and had turned that pain into a weapon, about how hurt people, and how that cycle never ended unless someone chose to break it. Wait, she said. Everyone turned to look at her. What if we give her a choice? Clara's mind was racing. What if instead of going to the FBI immediately, we offer her a deal, drop the lawsuit, leave us alone, never contact any of us again, and we won't press charges? Lucien's expression darkened. Clara, she threatened Danny. She filed false reports. She's been making my life hell. Clara kept her voice steady. I know that, but sending her to prison doesn't fix anything. It just continues the cycle. She deserves to face consequences, Lucien said. She does, but those consequences don't have to include destroying her entire life. Clara moved closer to him. Lucien, your father spent his whole life in a world where everything was solved through power and punishment. You told me you wanted to be different. This is how you're different. The room went silent. Gregory exchanged glances with the investigators, clearly waiting for Lucien's call. Lucien stared at Clara for a long moment, and she could see the war happening behind his eyes. The part of him that wanted revenge, that wanted to crush anyone who threatened what he loved, and the part that wanted to be better, that wanted to build something clean. One chance, he said finally. She gets one chance to walk away. If she takes it, we're done. If she doesn't, his voice went cold. We bury her. Gregory nodded. I'll arrange a meeting. The meeting happened in Gregory's conference room the next morning. Isabel arrived with her lawyer, looking polished and confident in a way that made Clara's teeth clench. But when Gregory laid out the evidence, bank records, recorded phone calls, documented fraud, that confidence crumbled fast. You can't prove any of this, Isabel's lawyer said, but his voice lacked conviction. We can prove all of it, Gregory replied calmly. We have forensic accountants ready to testify. We have witnesses. We have recordings of your client planning to file false claims about an innocent teacher. He slid a document across the table. Or we can make this all go away. Isabel grabbed the paper, her hands shaking. What is this? A settlement agreement, Lucien said, his voice flat. You drop the lawsuit immediately. You sign an NDA agreeing never to speak publicly about me, Clara, or our relationship. You cease all contact with Marcus Hayes or anyone else connected to us. And you leave New York. Leave New York? Isabel's voice rose. This is my home. This is where you've burned every bridge and made enemies of everyone who matters, Lucien interrupted. Take the deal. Start over somewhere else. Or stay and face federal charges. Your choice. Isabel looked at her lawyer, who gave a small, defeated shake of his head. They have everything, Isabel. If you fight this, you'll lose. Clara watched emotions flicker across Isabel's face. Rage, fear, desperation. And underneath it all, something that looked like exhaustion. Why are you doing this? Isabel asked, looking at Clara. Why not just destroy me? I would have destroyed you. I know, Clara said quietly, but I'm not you. Something in Isabel's expression cracked. She looked at the settlement agreement, at the future it represented, constrained but free, and Clara saw the moment she broke. Where do I sign? 30 minutes later, it was done. Isabel Duchamp signed away her lawsuit, her demands, her presence in their lives.
Her lawyer promised she'd be out of New York within a week. As they left the building, Lucian pulled Clara aside. That was the most terrifying thing I've ever watched. What was? You showing mercy to someone who tried to destroy you. His eyes were intense. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most naive. Maybe both, Clara said. But Lucienne, she was drowning and taking everyone down with her. Someone had to throw her a rope instead of pushing her under. Lucienne pulled her close, kissed her forehead. You make me want to be better than I am. You already are better than you think.
They went back to work on the campaign, and slowly life started to feel almost normal again. The documentary premiered to rave reviews and was picked up for a full series following the Foundation's work. Donations poured in. The pediatric wing Clara had organized the gala for broke ground 6 weeks ahead of schedule. And Marcus? Marcus sent one final text. I'm sorry for everything. You deserved better. Good luck with your billionaire. Then he was gone, blocked, and deleted from her life for good. Clara's parents came to visit, and her father spent 3 hours interrogating Lucien about his intentions, his business, his past. Lucien answered every question with patient honesty, and by the end of the night, her father was begrudgingly impressed. He's not what I expected, her father said to Clara while Lucien was in the kitchen getting drinks. What did you expect? Someone slick, someone who bought his way into your life. Her father looked at her seriously. But he looks at you like you hung the moon, and he didn't flinch when I asked about his ex-wife or his father's history. I respect that. So you approve? I approve of you being happy. And Clara, you look happier than I've seen you in years. It was true. Despite the chaos, despite the legal battles, and the public scrutiny, Clara felt lighter than she had in as long as she could remember, like she'd finally stopped trying to be what everyone else needed and started being exactly who she was. 3 months after Antonio's funeral, Lucien asked Clara to come to the Brooklyn clinic. They were dedicating the new wing, and he wanted her there for the ceremony. But when she arrived, the clinic was dark. Confused, Clara walked through the empty hallways until she found a single room lit up at the end of the corridor. Inside, Lucien stood surrounded by candles, wearing a suit that looked like he'd gotten it specially made, his expression nervous in a way she'd never seen. What is this? Clara asked, her heart starting to race. This is me being terrified, Lucien said. This is me realizing that I met you 11 weeks ago, and I already can't imagine the rest of my life without you in it. Clara's breath caught. This is me understanding that what we have doesn't make sense on paper. It's too fast, too intense, too complicated. Lucien moved closer. But it's also the most real thing I've ever felt. You walked into my life when I'd forgotten what it felt like to be human. You reminded me that there's more to life than building empires, that love is worth fighting for, that mercy is stronger than revenge. He dropped to one knee, and Clara's vision blurred with tears. Clara Bennett, I know this is insane. I know we've only known each other a few months, but I also know that I want to spend every day for the rest of my life making you laugh, protecting you, building something that matters with you. He pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, perfect. Will you marry me? Clara laughed through her tears, the sound bright and joyful. You're proposing in a hospital clinic? I'm proposing in the place that represents everything we've built together. Healthcare access, real change, the kind of future my mother would have been proud of. Lucien's voice was rough with emotion. This is where it started for me, my purpose. And you gave that purpose meaning again. Clara dropped to her knees in front of him, took his face in her hands. Yes, of course, yes. Lucien's smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. He slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and then they were kissing and crying and laughing all at once. I love you, Clara said against his mouth. I love you so much, it scares me. Good. I want to scare you. I want to challenge you. I want to build a life with you that's extraordinary. Lucien pulled back to look at her. No more crying from pain, Clara, I promise you that. From now on, if you cry, it's because you're happy. That's a dangerous promise. I keep my promises. The wedding happened 6 months later on the coast of Maine, in a small ceremony surrounded by the people who actually mattered. Clara's family, Lucien's extended relatives who'd flown in from Italy, the patients from the clinic who'd become like family, Rachel with her camera crew documenting everything. Danny walked Clara down the aisle, and she'd never seen her brother cry before, but he was openly weeping by the time he handed her off to Lucien. The vows were simple. Lucien promised to love her fiercely, to build a life worthy of her, to never let her forget how extraordinary she was. Clara promised to challenge him, to keep him human, to stand beside him through whatever came next. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Lucien pulled her in and kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. The reception was loud and chaotic and perfect. Clara danced with her father, with Danny, with Lucien's Uncle Tony, who'd catered the entire event, and kept crying about how beautiful it was. She watched Lucien laugh with her parents, watched him pick up a 5-year-old cancer patient and spin her around while she squealed with delight. And she thought about that morning 11 months ago when she'd walked in on Marcus and Vanessa, how she'd thought her life was ending, how she'd dragged herself to that meeting with mascara-stained cheeks and a broken heart, expecting nothing, how Lucien had looked at her and asked, "Who made you cry?" That question had changed everything. Later, during the toasts, Michelle stood up with a glass of champagne and a wicked smile. "I've known Clara for 8 years, and in that time, I've watched her build an incredible career, organize events that changed lives, and date a man who was completely wrong for her." She looked at Lucien. "Then you showed up, and suddenly Clara was different, lighter, more herself than I'd ever seen her. So thank you, Lucien Moretti, for seeing what the rest of us always knew, that Clara Bennett is extraordinary, and for being smart enough to build a life with her instead of being intimidated by her." The applause was thunderous. Danny went next, his voice thick with emotion. "When Clara told me she was dating a billionaire she'd known for a week, I thought she'd lost her mind. When she said she was marrying him 6 months later, I was sure of it." He grinned. "But then I met Lucien, and I saw the way he looks at my sister, like she's the answer to every question he's ever asked, like he'd burn down the world for her. That's the kind of love I want someday. So congratulations, you crazy kids. You're either the best decision each other ever made or the most spectacular disaster. I'm betting on the first one." More applause, more tears, and then Lucien stood, pulling Clara up with him. "I wasn't planning to make a speech, but looking around this room, at all of you who've supported us through the absolute chaos of the past year, I need to say something." He turned to Clara, his eyes bright. 11 months ago, I met a woman who walked into a business meeting hours after her life fell apart and still managed to stand tall, who answered an invasive question with brutal honesty because she was too tired to lie, who chose to trust me when she had every reason not to. His voice roughened. "Clara, you saved me. Not from anything external, not from my past or my enemies. You saved me from myself. From the isolated, controlled version of life I'd built where nothing could touch me because I wouldn't let anything in." He took both her hands. "You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that mercy is strength, that building something real with another person is worth more than any empire I could ever create. And I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret taking a chance on me." Clara was crying again, happy tears just like Lucien had promised. "You're going to make me ruin my makeup." "I'll buy you new makeup." He kissed her softly. "I love you, Mrs. Moretti. I love you too." They danced until the sun set over the ocean, until the stars came out, and the music shifted to something slow and sweet. And Clara rested her head on Lucien's shoulder and felt something settle in her chest, the certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Years passed in the kind of beautiful blur that good lives create. The Apex Foundation expanded to 12 cities, then 20, then 30. Rachel's documentary series won an Emmy. The pediatric wing at the Children's Hospital became a model for facilities across the country. Clara's career flourished. She started her own firm focusing exclusively on campaigns that mattered: healthcare, education, social justice. Lucien was her first investor and her most enthusiastic supporter, sitting in on strategy sessions and asking questions that made her think harder about everything. They bought a house in Brooklyn, not far from where Antonio had lived. Close enough to the old neighborhood that Lucien could visit his father's grave every Sunday, but far enough that they could build something new. They fought sometimes. Lucien's control issues didn't disappear overnight, and Clara's stubbornness occasionally ran headfirst into his need to protect her. But they learned to navigate it, to communicate instead of assuming, to choose each other even when it was hard, and Lucian kept his promise. Clara cried, but never from pain. She cried when they opened the 50th Apex Foundation Clinic. When Danny got engaged to a wonderful woman who taught history at his school. When Lucien surprised her with a trip to Sicily to meet the extended family she'd only heard about in stories. She cried when she found out she was pregnant, and again when Lucien held their daughter for the first time with tears streaming down his face. They named her Juliana, after Lucien's mother. And watching him rock their baby girl to sleep while humming Italian lullabies, Clara understood that this was what healing looked like. Generational, intentional, built one choice at a time. On their 5th anniversary, Lucien took Clara back to the conference room where they'd first met. The building had changed ownership, but he'd arranged access through the kind of connections that came with being Lucien Moretti.
"Why are we here?" Clara asked, looking around the space that held so many memories. "Because this is where you changed my life." Lucien pulled her to the exact spot where she'd stood during that first meeting. "This is where I looked at a woman who was barely holding herself together and asked a question I had no right to ask." "Who made you cry?" Clara said softly.
"Who made you cry?" he repeated. "And you answered me. And in that moment I knew you were going to matter to me. Knew you were going to change everything." Clara thought about that day, about the person she'd been, broken and lost and trying so hard to be strong. "I was a mess. You were magnificent." Lucien pulled her close. "And you still are, every single day." "Even when I'm sleep-deprived and covered in baby spit-up?" "Especially then." They stood there in the conference room, holding each other, and Clara thought about the journey from there to here. About Marcus and Isabel and all the people who'd tried to break them. About Antonio's wisdom and Danny's support and Michelle's unwavering friendship. About the choice to show up, to be vulnerable, to build something real instead of something perfect. "Do you ever regret it?" Clara asked. "How fast everything moved, how complicated it got." "Never." Lucien's answer was immediate. Every complication was worth it. Every challenge made us stronger. "Clara, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. The best decision I ever made." "You didn't make me. I made myself." "I know, that's what I love most." He smiled. "You're not someone I created or controlled or shaped into what I wanted. You're someone who chose to build a life with me while staying completely unapologetically yourself." Clara kissed him, soft and certain. "Thank you for asking who made me cry. Thank you for answering honestly." They left the building and drove home to their daughter, to their life, to the future they were building one day at a time. And Clara understood something fundamental about love that she'd never quite grasped before, that it wasn't about being perfect or having all the answers or never making mistakes. It was about showing up, about choosing each other when it would be easier to walk away, about building something strong enough to withstand the storms instead of looking for something that would never face any weather. Marcus had made her cry from pain, from betrayal, from the slow erosion of being with someone who diminished her light. But Lucien had made her cry from joy, from being seen, from building something so extraordinary that sometimes she still couldn't believe it was real. And years later, standing in the office where it all began, the same conference room where a broken woman had met a man who saw past the tears to the strength underneath, Clara realized she hadn't cried from pain since the day she met him, because Lucien Moretti had kept his promise. No one had made her cry since that morning, not from heartbreak, not from feeling small, not from being underestimated or overlooked or made to feel like she was too much. She cried from happiness now, from pride in what they'd built, from watching their daughter take her first steps, from seeing communities transformed by the work they'd started together. She cried because life was beautiful and messy and complicated and absolutely worth every struggle. And she cried because she'd learned that the question, "Who made you cry?" was never really about blame. It was about understanding that how people treat you in your darkest moments reveals everything you need to know about their character. Marcus had seen her pain as weakness, as something to exploit. Lucien had seen it as humanity, as something to protect. That difference had changed everything. So when people asked Clara about her love story, and they did ask, because the tale of the billionaire who fell for the heartbroken event planner had become the kind of legend people told at dinner parties. She never told them about the whirlwind romance or the dramatic legal battles or even the fairy tale wedding. She told them about a question, about a man who asked,
who made you cry, and actually wanted to know the answer, about choosing to be vulnerable when every instinct screamed to build walls higher, about learning that the right person doesn't fix you or complete you or make you whole. The right person sees you exactly as you are, broken and brilliant and perfectly imperfect, and chooses to build a life with you anyway. That was the real story, the one worth telling. And it had started with tears and ended with joy, just the way the best stories always do.